In the heart of Orlando, Florida, during the hot summer of July 2011, lived Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy, both 44, with their 3 children. Their life was not what most would consider typical. Evan served the community as a Unitarian minister, known for his engaging sermons and compassionate nature. Danielle, who was also a Unitarian minister, was a woman of ambition and adventure, always seeking new experiences. The Shaughnessy's were advocates for an open marriage, a lifestyle choice where partners agree it's acceptable to have sexual relationships outside of their marriage. This was symbolized by an upside-down pineapple sticker on their SUV, a symbol of the swinger lifestyle. They were open and proud of their lifestyle, hoping to foster a community built on the principles of sex and love without restrictions and acceptance of different ways of living. They were featured in a 2010 documentary called Love Unlimited: Polyamory in America, where they shared their experiences and beliefs about non-monogamy. They also ran a blog where they discussed topics such as spirituality, sexuality, and social justice. Their views on love and relationships made them stand out in Orlando, a city buzzing with life due to its attractions like Disney World and Universal Studios, which were drawing crowds eager to experience the new wizarding world of Harry Potter that had opened the previous year. Amidst this backdrop of fantasy and excitement, the Shaughnessy's pursued their dream of a progressive community. However, their unconventional life was not without its challenges. Evan and Danielle navigated the complexities of their open marriage while juggling responsibilities as parents and professionals. They were determined to live authentically, despite societal norms that often clashed with their values. As July 2011 unfolded, the Shaughnessy's found themselves at a crossroads, their lives entangled in a web of love, betrayal, and addiction. Their story is a stark reminder of the delicate balance between freedom and responsibility and the unforeseen consequences that can arise from pushing the boundaries of sexual relationships. On the evening of July 15, 2011, a horrific crime shattered the peace and tranquility of a suburban neighborhood in Orlando, Florida. The Shaughnessy family, known for their progressive and unconventional lifestyle, became the victims of a brutal and senseless murder. Their bodies were discovered by their 15-year-old daughter, Caitlin, who had just returned from a summer camp in North Carolina. She was greeted by a nightmarish scene of blood and carnage. As she walked into the living room, she was greeted by a scene of unimaginable horror. There, on the floor, lay the naked bodies of her parents, covered in blood and stab wounds. They had been viciously attacked by an unknown assailant who had inflicted multiple injuries on their chests, necks, and faces. The living room was a bloody mess, with furniture overturned and blood spattered on the walls and carpet. Caitlin was overcome with shock and terror as she realized that her parents were dead. She immediately called 911, sobbing and screaming for help. Her frantic voice was recorded by the dispatcher, who tried to calm her down and get more information. "My parents are dead. They're dead. There's blood everywhere. Please, 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 help me," Caitlin cried. The police and paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was too late to save the victims. Caitlin was taken to a nearby hospital, where she was treated for shock and trauma. She was later placed in the care of her aunt, who flew in from New York. The brutal slaying of the Shaughnessy couple sent shockwave through the Orlando community, especially among their friends and fellow members of the First Unitarian Church of Orlando. The couple, who had been married for 20 years, were described by their friends and family as loving, compassionate, and adventurous people who wanted to create a more inclusive and accepting world. They had no known enemies or conflicts, which made their murder even more baffling and disturbing. Who would want to kill them, and why? These were the questions that haunted the investigators, who would face a complex and challenging case. Within minutes of receiving the frantic 911 call on July 15, 2011 from Caitlin Shaughnessy, the Orlando Police Department dispatched a team of officers to the scene of the crime. The Shaughnessy home, located in the affluent Baldwin Park neighborhood, was cordoned off as a potential homicide site. The first responders, led by Detective Eugene Domingo, entered the house with caution, unsure of what they would find inside. What they witnessed was a scene of unimaginable horror. The living room, decorated with modern furniture and colorful artwork, was soaked with blood, the furniture overturned. On the floor, the corpses of Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy lay naked, their bodies riddled with multiple stab wounds. The couple, who had been married for 20 years, had been brutally murdered in their own home. The police quickly assessed the situation and called for backup and medical assistance. They also tried to comfort Caitlin, who was in a state of shock and trauma. She was taken to the Orlando Regional Medical Center, where she was treated for minor injuries and psychological distress. She was later joined by her aunt, who flew in from New York to take care of her. The investigators quickly searched for any signs of forced entry, robbery, or struggle, but found none. The house was in order, except for the bloody carnage in the living room. The murder weapon, a knife, was nowhere to be found. The only clue they had was a partial fingerprint found on the door handle, which they hoped would match someone in their database, along with a faint footprint on the carpet, possibly belonging to the killer. Detective Domingo was baffled by the motive and the identity of the murderer. Who would want to kill the Shaughnessy's, a well-liked and respected couple in the community? What was the reason behind this savage and senseless act of violence? They had no enemies or conflicts, as far as anyone knew, which made their murder even more baffling and disturbing. The police vowed to find the killer and bring justice to the Shaughnessy family, who had lost two of their own in a senseless and savage act of violence. The police had a first suspect in their sights, Caitlin Shaughnessy, the 15-year-old daughter of Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy, the Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates who were stabbed to death in their Orlando home on July 15, 2011. Caitlin, who had discovered her parents' bodies after returning from a summer camp in North Carolina, was the only person in the house at the time of the murder. She was also the one who called 911, alerting the authorities to the horrific crime. The police wondered if she had a motive to kill her parents, who had a history of inviting strangers into their bed for sex as part of their unconventional lifestyle. They also questioned her alibi, which was based on the testimony of her camp counselors and fellow campers. The police interrogated Caitlin, hoping to find cracks in her story or signs of guilt. Caitlin, however, maintained her innocence, insisting that she had nothing to do with her parents' deaths. She cooperated with the police, providing them with access to her phone, computer, and social media accounts. She also agreed to take a polygraph test, which she passed. Caitlin, who was in a state of shock and grief, expressed her anger and confusion at being accused of such a heinous act. She also broke down in tears as she mourned the loss of her beloved parents. She was supported by her aunt, Edwina, who flew in from New York to take care of her. She also received counseling and therapy as she tried to cope with the trauma and the stress of the investigation. Caitlin, who was a bright and cheerful girl, had her life turned upside down by the tragic events that unfolded. She was a sophomore at Lake Highland Preparatory School, where she was an honors student and a member of the drama club. She had a passion for music and theater and dreamed of becoming a Broadway star. Caitlin, who had no history of violence or mental illness, was a victim of a brutal crime that robbed her of her family and her innocence. She was also a suspect in a murder investigation that threatened to ruin her reputation and her future. The police turned their attention to Dominic and Allison Rothman, close friends of Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy and fellow practitioners of the open marriage lifestyle. The Rothmans, both in their 40s, were successful professionals and parents of two. Dominic was a lawyer and Allison was a real estate agent. They had met the Shaughnessy's at a swingers club in Orlando, where they had bonded over their shared interest in polyamory, the practice of having multiple consensual romantic and sexual relationships. The couples had become inseparable, spending weekends together, even going on vacations as a blended family. They had also appeared in the 2010 documentary Love Unlimited, Polyamory in America, where they had discussed their views and experiences on non-monogamy. The police interrogated the Rothmans, wondering if they had any motive or involvement in the brutal murders of their friends. They asked them about their whereabouts on the night of the crime, their relationship with the victims, and their knowledge of any enemies or threats. The Rothmans cooperated with the police, providing them with alibis, phone records, and testimonies from other witnesses. They also denied any role in the killings, expressing their shock and sorrow at the loss of their friends. They claimed that they had a loving and respectful romantic and sexual relationship with the Shaughnessy's, and that they had no reason to harm them. They also said that they were unaware of any conflicts or problems that the Shaughnessy's had with anyone else. The Rothmans, who had lived a harmonious yet unconventional life, saw their dreams shattered by the tragic events that unfolded. They were not only grieving for their friends, but also facing suspicion and scrutiny from the authorities, the media, and the public. They were also worried about the impact of the investigation on their children and their careers. The Rothmans, who had embraced a lifestyle of freedom and sexual exploration, found themselves trapped in a nightmare of violence and mystery. The mystery of the Shaughnessy murders took a dramatic turn on July 25, 2011, when the Orlando police, led by Detective Eugene Domingo, made a stunning discovery. In a remote wooded area, about a mile away from the Shaughnessy residence, they unearthed a knife that was covered in blood and dirt. The knife, a tin-inch chef's knife that had been purchased from a Walmart store in Orlando on July 14, 2011, the day before the murders, matched the description of the murder weapon given by the medical examiner. The knife had been used to inflict multiple stab wounds to the chest, neck, and face of Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy, the Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates who had been killed in their home on July 15, 2011. The police seized the knife and sent it to the crime lab for analysis. The results confirmed their suspicions. The knife had traces of the victim's blood and DNA, as well as the DNA of another person. The police ran the DNA profile through their database, hoping to find a match. They hit the jackpot. The DNA belonged to Steve Ballywick, a 54-year-old man with a criminal record and a history of drug abuse. The police had a new person of interest in the case, and they wasted no time in tracking him down. The police had found a possible killer, and they had the proof to back it up. The discovery of the knife was a major breakthrough in the case, as it provided the police with a solid lead. But still, there were questions. How had Steve met the Shaughnessy's? Was it at a swingers club, and had he been invited to join them for a night of sex? Had he snapped and stabbed them to death in a drug-fueled frenzy? The police had a person of interest in their sights, Steve Ballywick, a 54-year-old man whose sedan was seen near the Shaughnessy residence on the night of the murder. Steve, an ex-felon with a troubled past and a history of drug abuse, became the prime suspect after his DNA was found on the knife that was used to kill Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy. The Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates who were stabbed to death in their Orlando home on July 15, 2011. The police, led by Detective Eugene Domingo, tracked down Steve to a motel in Kissimmee, Florida, where he was staying in a room that contained more evidence of his involvement in the crime. The police surrounded the motel and knocked on the door of his room. Steve, who was high on bath salts at the time, opened the door and saw the police. He panicked and tried to run, but the police tackled him and arrested him. That night they interrogated him, trying to get him to confess and explain his motive. Steve, however, denied any involvement in the gruesome crime, claiming that he had never met the Shaughnessy's and that he had nothing to do with their deaths. He expressed his anger and frustration at being accused of such a heinous act, casting down on the authorities' suspicions. Steve, who had lived a life of addiction and crime, was facing the most serious question of his life. Had he killed the Shaughnessy's in a drug-fueled frenzy? The shocking truth behind the Shaughnessy murders was finally revealed. The killer was none other than Steve Ballywick, a 54-year-old man who had been high on bath salts, a dangerous synthetic drug that had been linked to several violent incidents in Florida and across the country. Bath salts, which mimic the effects of cocaine and methamphetamine, can cause paranoia, hallucinations, and aggression. Steve had met Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy, the Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates, at a swingers club in Orlando, where they had invited him to join them for a night of sex at their home. Unbeknownst to them, Steve had taken bath salts before arriving at their house. In a drug-induced frenzy, he attacked them with a knife that he had bought from a Walmart store the day before. He stabbed them repeatedly, mutilating their faces and bodies. He then fled the scene, leaving behind a trail of blood and evidence. The police, who had been investigating the case for 10 days, found the knife buried in a nearby wooded area, where it had Steve's DNA and the victim's blood on it. They arrested him and searched his room, where they found more proof of his guilt, a receipt for the purchase of the knife, a pair of blood-stained jeans and shoes, and a bag of bath salts. Steve, who had a criminal record and a history of drug abuse, denied any involvement in the crime, claiming that he had never met the Shaughnessy's and that he had nothing to do with their deaths. He was lying, and the police had the DNA evidence to prove it. Steve, who had betrayed the trust of the Shaughnessy's and killed them in a drug-fueled rage, was facing 2 counts of first-degree murder and the wrath of an angry public, who were outraged and horrified by his actions they had seen on TV or online. The final chapter in the Shaughnessy murder case was written in a Florida courtroom, where the killer, Steve Ballywick, faced the consequences of his actions. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Miles Ocampo, a veteran of high-profile cases, presented a strong case against Ballywick, who had stabbed Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy to death in their Orlando home on July 15, 2011. Ocampo showed the jury the gruesome photos of the crime scene, the bloodstained knife that was used as the murder weapon, and the DNA evidence that linked Ballywick to the killings. He He also played the 911 call made by the victim's daughter, Caitlin, who had discovered her parents' bodies, and the testimony of the police officers who had arrested Ballywick at a motel in Kissimmee, Florida, where he had been staying with a bag of bath salts, a synthetic drug that had been linked to several violent incidents in Florida and across the country. Ocampo portrayed Ballywick as a cold-blooded killer who had betrayed the trust of the Shaughnessy's, who had invited him to join them for a night of sex and had killed them in a drug-fueled frenzy. He asked the jury to deliver justice for the Shaughnessy family, who had suffered a devastating loss. The defense attorney, Mitchell Raimundo, a public defender who had taken on Ballywick's case, argued for a different verdict. He claimed that Ballywick was not guilty by reason of insanity and that he had been under the influence of bath salts, which had caused him to lose touch with reality and act impulsively. He said that Ballywick had a history of mental illness and drug abuse and that he needed treatment, not punishment. He appealed to the jury's compassion and understanding and asked them to spare Ballywick's life. The victim's family, who had been following the trial closely, watched as the jury deliberated for 2 hours before returning with their verdict. They found Ballywick guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a mix of emotions to the courtroom. Some felt that the verdict was too lenient and that Ballywick deserved the death penalty. Others felt that the verdict was fair and that Ballywick would pay for his crimes for the rest of his life. The impact of the verdict rippled through the lives of all involved, forever altering their perception of the world. The trial of Steve Ballywick, the bath salts killer who brutally murdered Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy, the Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates, in their Orlando home on July 15, 2011, left a lasting impact on the lives of those who were touched by the tragedy. Caitlin Shaughnessy, the 15-year-old daughter of the victims, who had found their mutilated bodies, was traumatized by the horrific ordeal. She sought solace and therapy in the support of her extended family, who had long presumed her parents dead. She also received an outpouring of sympathy from the public, who donated over $100,000 to a fund set up by the Miami Herald to help her with her education and future. Dominic and Allison Rothman, the close friends of the Shaughnessy family and fellow proponents of the non-monogamous lifestyle, were scarred by the suspicion cast upon them by the police and the media. They distanced themselves from the open marriage scene, which had been growing in popularity in Florida and across the country. They focused on healing their own relationship and coping with the loss of their friends. The police, led by Detective Eugene Domingo, who had worked tirelessly to solve the case and bring the killer to justice, were forever marked by the horrors they witnessed. They continued their efforts to combat the rising threat of bath salts, a synthetic drug that had been linked to several violent incidents in Florida and across the country. They also praised the bravery and cooperation of the witnesses in the victim's family, who had helped them with the investigation. And the Shaughnessy family, who had been estranged from Evan and Danielle for years, were forever scarred by the loss of their loved ones. They found strength in their shared memories and the love that remained. They also learned to accept and respect the choices that Evan and Danielle had made and the legacy that they had left behind. Olivia Watson, a vibrant 29-year-old, was a woman driven by her insatiable wanderlust. Hailing from the constraining conservative town of Bentonville, Arkansas, known only for being the headquarters of Walmart, she defied the confines of her small-town origins, embracing a life of adventure and exploration. As one of the pioneers in the world of travel blogging, Olivia's name resonated across the internet, inspiring others to follow in her footsteps. Despite her humble beginnings, Olivia possessed an indomitable spirit and an unwavering love for the unknown. Her passion for travel was matched only by her deep-rooted compassion for others. Whether it was lending a helping hand to a fellow traveler or championing a charitable cause, Olivia's altruism knew no bounds. In the summer of 2004, Olivia's star was on the rise. She was on the cusp of literary success, with her debut novel, The Hungry Ghosts, poised to captivate readers worldwide. The book, a poignant tale blending Chinese folklore with the story of the disintegration of famous video game characters Pac-Man and Mrs. Pac-Man's marriage, had garnered the attention of literary critics and even caught the eye of Oprah Winfrey herself, who was rumored to be considering it for her esteemed book club. As the sun-drenched days of July enveloped Turks and Caicos, Olivia found solace in the island's pristine beaches and azure waters. She reveled in the vibrant culture and soaked up the local flavors, immersing herself in the tapestry of this idyllic paradise. Little did she know that her time in this tropical haven would be tragically cut short. The tranquility of the turquoise waters surrounding the idyllic Turks and Caicos Islands was shattered on a sweltering afternoon in July 2004. Patty Brecht, a tourist from West Islip, New York, was innocently strolling along the pristine beach when she stumbled upon a horrifying sight. Half buried in the sand, she discovered the severed head of Olivia Watson, a vibrant 29-year-old travel blogger from Bentonville, Arkansas, whose love for adventure and exploration had brought her to this tropical paradise. News of the discovery spread like wildfire, sending shockwaves far beyond the tight-knit community of the travel blogging world. As the investigation unfolded, authorities would scour the crime scene for any clues that could shed light on Olivia's untimely demise. The turquoise waters, once a symbol of serenity, now held a dark secret. The island chain, known for its pristine beauty and luxurious resorts, became a hotbed of media attention. News outlets descended upon Turks and Caicos, hungry for the latest updates on the investigation. Journalists set up camp near the crime scene, their cameras capturing the somber atmosphere that had engulfed the once tranquil paradise. Rumors and speculations ran rampant, fueled by the media coverage. The local community, usually tight-knit and welcoming, became wary of outsiders as suspicion hung in the air. Tourists, who had once flocked to the islands for their picturesque beaches and vibrant culture, now hesitated, unsure of the safety of this once-beloved destination. Turks and Caicos, once a paradise for many, had become a haunting reminder of the brutality that shattered its tranquility. The turquoise waters, once a symbol of beauty, now held a dark secret that refused to be forgotten. On that fateful afternoon in July 2004, the pristine beaches of Turks and Caicos transformed into a chilling crime scene. Detectives Michael Sanchez and Tamar Rodriguez, seasoned investigators from the local police force, arrived swiftly to confront the grim reality that awaited them. The turquoise waters, once a symbol of tranquility, now mirrored the horror that had unfolded. The sand, usually soft and inviting, was stained crimson, bearing witness to the violence that had taken place. The scene resembled something out of a crime drama, a shocking tableau that would haunt the island's residents for years to come. The head of Olivia Watson, the vibrant and adventurous travel blogger, was found half buried in the sand, roughly severed. The sheer brutality of the crime hinted at a motive fueled by rage, leaving the detectives puzzled and the community in shock. The absence of any immediate clues regarding the cause of death or location of the rest of her body only deepened the mystery surrounding this heinous act. As the investigation unfolded, the detectives meticulously combed through every inch of the crime scene. They painstakingly collected samples of the stained sand, preserving the evidence that would later be subjected to rigorous forensic analysis. The sand, once a symbol of leisure and relaxation, now held the key to unraveling the truth behind Olivia's tragic demise. Local residents were gripped with fear and apprehension, their once idyllic paradise transformed into a nightmare. The murder cast a dark shadow over the island, shattering the sense of security that had once prevailed. Tourists, who had flocked to Turks and Caicos for its pristine beauty, now found themselves questioning their decision to visit this once tranquil destination. As the investigation continued, the detectives delved into Olivia's life, seeking any possible leads that could shed light on her untimely demise. They meticulously reviewed her travel blog, scouring her posts for any hints or clues that could point them in the right direction. The blog, once a testament to Olivia's adventurous spirit, now served as a haunting reminder of a life cut short. Jason Reyes, a 30-year-old software engineer, was the devoted boyfriend of Olivia Watson, the vibrant travel blogger whose tragic death shocked the idyllic island chain of Turks and Caicos in July 2004. Described as charming and charismatic, Jason had won the hearts of many with his affable personality. However, behind his charming exterior lay a darker side that friends of the couple had started to notice. According to those close to them, Jason's behavior had taken a turn for the worse in recent months. While he appeared to be deeply in love with Olivia, his possessive and controlling tendencies had become increasingly apparent. Friends of the couple revealed that Jason had been involved in multiple affairs with other women, despite his supposed commitment to Olivia. The couple's friends were taken aback by the stark contrast between Jason's public persona and his private actions. They recalled instances where he would shower Olivia with gifts and affection, only to later display jealousy and anger when she interacted with other people, particularly men. These incidents had caused tension within their relationship, and Olivia's friends had expressed concern about the toxic dynamic that was developing. In addition to his troubled relationship with Olivia, Jason had also been facing difficulties at work. Colleagues at the software engineering firm where he was employed described him as highly intelligent but increasingly isolated and moody. Some even mentioned that he had been reprimanded by his superiors for missing deadlines and exhibiting erratic behavior. As news of Olivia's tragic death spread, the media began to dig deeper into the couple's relationship. Rumors of Jason's infidelity and controlling behavior started to circulate, capturing the attention of the public. The local newspaper, the Turks and Caicos Daily, ran a front-page article detailing the couple's tumultuous relationship, citing anonymous sources close to the investigation. Luana Parker, 34, a receptionist at Walmart headquarters in Bentonville, Arkansas, was known for her outgoing and vivacious personality. She had been Olivia Watson's loyal best friend for years, always by her side through thick and thin. Their bond was unbreakable, or so it seemed. During their trip to Turks and Caicos in July 2004, Luana's protective nature was on full display. She made sure Olivia was safe at all times, ensuring they followed proper safety protocols and avoided any risky situations. Luana's dedication to her friend was unwavering, but little did Olivia know that Luana held a secret that could shatter their friendship forever. Luana had been secretly involved in a passionate love affair with Jason Reyes, Olivia's boyfriend. It was a relationship fueled by desire and forbidden love, hidden behind closed doors. Luana's heart yearned for Jason, the man who charmed her with his charismatic personality. She couldn't resist his allure, even though she knew it was wrong. As the days in paradise unfolded, Luana found herself torn between her loyalty to Olivia and her intense love for Jason. She struggled to keep her emotions in check, constantly battling the guilt that consumed her. The weight of her secret became unbearable, threatening to destroy the very foundation of their friendship. In the aftermath of Olivia's death, Luana found herself caught in a web of lies and deceit. She knew she had to come clean about her affair with Jason, but the fear of losing everything held her back. She couldn't bear the thought of losing both Olivia and Jason, the two people who had become her whole world. As the investigation into Olivia's murder intensified, the truth began to unravel. Luana's secret was exposed, and the media frenzy surrounding the case only added to the pressure. The world watched as this small island paradise became the backdrop for a scandal that would forever change the lives of those involved. In the midst of the investigation into Olivia Watson's brutal murder, a crucial piece of evidence emerged that sent shockwaves through the media. It was revealed that Olivia had participated in a local tradition known as Island Love, a ritual where participants, locals, and tourists alike, were randomly paired for sex. This revelation added a new layer of complexity to the already perplexing case. Olivia's Island Love partner was none other than Joey Clacker, a 45-year-old married man from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Joey, a mild-mannered accountant by day, had been visiting the Turks and Caicos Islands with his wife and 5 children. The news of his involvement in this scandalous affair sent shockwaves through his community back home. The Island Love tradition, while considered a titillating and exciting adventure for many, had now become a focal point in the investigation. Detectives Michael Sanchez and Tamara Rodriguez meticulously combed through the details, trying to determine if this encounter held any significance in Olivia's murder. As the investigation unfolded, the media frenzy surrounding Olivia's murder intensified. News outlets from Bentonville, Arkansas to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and beyond were captivated by the shocking turn of events. Headlines from the New York Post screamed about the Island Love tragedy, with journalists speculating about the potential motives and hidden secrets behind Olivia and Joey's ill-fated encounter. Friends and family of Olivia were left bewildered by this unexpected twist. How could their vibrant and adventurous Olivia, known for her love of travel and exploration, find herself entangled in such a sordid affair? The once idyllic paradise of Turks and Caicos had now become a hotbed of speculation and intrigue. In the picturesque setting of Turks and Caicos in July 2004, a scandalous affair unfolded, shattering the tranquility of this idyllic island chain. Joey Clacker, a married man and father of 5 from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, found himself entangled in a web of desire and obsession with Olivia Watson, the vibrant travel blogger whose life was tragically cut short. Joey, known for his adventurous spirit and magnetic personality, willingly participated in the local tradition known as Island Love. This tradition, which paired participants for a one night of sex, brought Joey and Olivia together in a passionate encounter. Their connection was intense, but short-lived, as Olivia's independent spirit and commitment to her career and boyfriend prevented any further romantic involvement. However, the flame of Joey's infatuation continued to burn. Consumed by jealousy and resentment towards anyone who stood in his way, Joey's obsession with Olivia took a dark turn. Friends close to the couple revealed that Joey's feelings for Olivia grew into an unhealthy fixation, leading him down a dangerous path. The facade of friendship between Joey and Olivia crumbled as his true intentions were exposed. Friends and acquaintances were shocked to discover that Joey, a seemingly devoted family man, harbored a secret desire to win Olivia back. His actions became increasingly erratic as he desperately sought to rekindle their connection. As authorities delved deeper into the investigation surrounding Olivia's murder, they discovered the extent of Joey's obsession. The evidence pointed to a motive driven by jealousy and a desperate desire to possess Olivia, even if it meant resorting to violence. The shocking murder case that unfolded on the idyllic island chain of Turks and Caicos in July 2004 took a startling turn. As the investigation progressed, a web of love, lies, and betrayal begins to unravel, revealing a sinister plot that ended in the tragic death of Olivia Watson, a vibrant travel blogger. New evidence emerged, shedding light on the motive behind Olivia's brutal murder. It was none other than Luana Parker, Olivia's seemingly loyal best friend, who masterminded the heinous crime. Luana's jealousy and resentment towards Olivia's relationship with Jason Reyes, Olivia's devoted boyfriend and Luana's lover, drove her to take drastic measures to eliminate her perceived rival. Driven by envy and insecurity, Luana hatched a plan to ensure Jason's unwavering devotion to her and to remove any threat to their relationship. The revelation of Olivia's participation in the local tradition of Island Love, where participants were randomly paired for a sex, became the catalyst for Luana's sinister plot. Jason, upon discovering Olivia's involvement in Island Love, was consumed by a mix of emotions. His love for Olivia and his anger at being betrayed pushed him to join Luana in the murder plot. Together, they cornered Olivia on a secluded beach, wielding coconuts as their deadly weapons, and beat her to death in that dismembering her body afterwards, leaving her body to the waves but keeping her head in the sand. The investigation has uncovered a series of events that paint a chilling picture of the days leading up to the murder. Friends of the couple revealed that Jason, known for his charming and charismatic personality, had a darker side. He became increasingly possessive and controlling in his relationship with Olivia, despite engaging in multiple affairs with other women. Despite their arrest, the tranquility of Turks and Caicos has been forever shattered, and the repercussions of this crime will be felt for years to come. The trial that unfolded in the wake of Olivia Watson's brutal murder in Turks and Caicos in July 2004 was a harrowing ordeal for her grieving family and the tight-knit island community. The courtroom was filled with tension as prosecutor Diana Lachlan-Brose meticulously presented the evidence, painting a vivid picture of deceit and violence that had shattered the tranquility of this idyllic paradise. The defense attorney fought desperately to create doubt, but the weight of the evidence was undeniable. The jury listened intently as witness after witness took the stand, recounting the events that led to Olivia's tragic demise. The testimony of Patty Brecht, the beachcomber who stumbled upon Olivia's half-buried body, sent shivers down the spines of those in the courtroom. The sight of Olivia's bloody, severed head, stained crimson by the violence inflicted upon her, was etched in the memories of all who bore witness. The prosecution presented a crucial piece of evidence: Olivia's participation in a local tradition called Island Love. This tradition, as it turned out, involved random pairings for one night of sex. Olivia's assigned partner was Joey Clacker, a married man from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. The revelation of this affair added a layer of complexity to the case, further entangling the lives of those involved. As the trial progressed, the motive behind the murder began to unravel. It was revealed that Olivia's boyfriend, Jason Reyes, had discovered her involvement in island love and had become consumed by jealousy. Driven by a toxic combination of envy and insecurity, Jason enlisted the help of his secret lover and Olivia's best friend, Luana Parker, to carry out the heinous act. The courtroom was filled with gasps as the details of the twisted murder plot were laid bare. Jason and Luana had cornered Olivia on a secluded beach, armed with coconuts, and beat her to death, later dismembering her body. The brutality of the crime sent shockwaves through the community, leaving a lasting scar on the once tranquil island. Finally, after weeks of emotional testimony and legal arguments, the jury reached a verdict. Both Jason and Luana were found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Olivia's family, though finding a measure of solace in the outcome, knew that their lives would never be the same again. As the trial came to a close, the idyllic paradise of Turks and Caicos was forever tainted by the memory of this brutal crime. The island, known for its turquoise waters and pristine beaches, would now also be associated with the darkness that had unfolded within its borders. In the aftermath of the brutal murder that shook the idyllic island paradise of Turks and Caicos in July of 2004, the community slowly began the process of healing. For Olivia's family, the pain of their loss was immeasurable. They sought solace in the memories of their vibrant and adventurous daughter, cherishing the moments they had shared. Though devastated, they found strength in the support of their community and the unwavering dedication of the detectives who fought for justice. As time passed, the wounds began to heal, but the echoes of Olivia's murder would forever linger in the collective memory of Turks and Caicos. The island slowly regained its sense of tranquility, but the scars left by the tragedy would never fully fade. Detectives Sanchez and Rodriguez, forever changed by their involvement in the case, continued their fight for justice in other investigations. Their tireless dedication to upholding the law and protecting their community remained unwavering. In the end, Olivia's story serves as a somber reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that even in the most picturesque of places, darkness can take hold. The idyllic island paradise of Turks and Caicos may have been marred by this brutal crime, but the community's resilience and determination to move forward ensured that hope would prevail. Laura Samuels was a 34-year-old marketing executive living in Sacramento, California. She worked at a big company called Bright Ideas Marketing. Laura was well known at work for her ambitious nature and drive to succeed. She balanced her busy job with a warm and friendly personality, which made her popular among her coworkers and friends. Laura loved outdoor activities, especially hiking and camping. She often took trips to Yosemite National Park and Lake Tahoe. She was also a member of a local book club, where she enjoyed discussing her favorite novels by the author Joyce Lehman. Laura's friends described her as kind-hearted and always ready to help others. She had a bright smile that could light up a room. In June 2010, Laura was planning a special camping trip with her family. She and her husband, Carl, along with their two children, Ponderosa, age 10, and Velveeta, age 8, were excited about their upcoming adventure. Laura had already packed their tent, sleeping bags, and food supplies. She had even bought new hiking boots from LL Bean for the trip. Laura's children were looking forward to roasting marshmallows and telling stories around the campfire. At work, Laura was expecting a big promotion. Her boss had hinted that she might become the new head of the marketing department. This promotion was a dream come true for Laura, who had worked hard for many years. She was excited about the future and looking forward to the new challenges and opportunities it would bring. Laura was also very close to her family. Her parents lived in nearby Vacaville and often visited to spend time with their grandchildren. Laura's sister, Emily, lived in Los Angeles, but they kept in touch regularly through phone calls and emails. Laura cherished these relationships and made sure to stay connected with her loved ones. In the days before her death, Laura was full of life and excitement. She was looking forward to the camping trip and the possibility of a promotion at work. Her friends and family remember her as a loving and caring person who always put others first. Laura's tragic death was a shocking and heartbreaking loss to everyone who knew her. On the morning of June 14, 2010, Carl Samuels woke up early to get ready for work. It was around 7 o'clock a.m., and the sun was shining brightly in Sacramento, California. Carl noticed that his wife, Laura, was not in bed. Thinking she might be in the kitchen, he went downstairs. To his horror, he found Laura's lifeless body in the living room. Laura had been beaten to death with a hairbrush. Her face was bruised, and there were signs of a struggle. Carl immediately called 911, his voice shaking as he tried to explain what he had found. He was in shock, unable to believe that his loving wife was gone. The 911 operator, calmly taking down details, dispatched police and emergency services to the Samuels home. Carl sat by Laura's body, tears streaming down his face, waiting for help to arrive. He felt a mix of grief, confusion, and disbelief. Emergency responders arrived within minutes. Paramedics confirmed that Laura was dead, and police officers quickly secured the area. Carl was visibly shaken and struggled to answer questions. He kept repeating how much he loved Laura and how he couldn't understand who would want to hurt her. The detectives noted his distress, but also kept in mind that in such cases, the spouse is often a person of interest. Outside, neighbors started to gather, curious about the police presence. The news quickly spread through the community. Local TV stations, such as KCRA3, began reporting on the incident, mentioning Laura's name and describing her as a well-liked member of the community. By late morning, the house was a hub of activity. Forensic experts arrived to collect more evidence. They dusted for fingerprints, took samples from the crime scene, and carefully bagged the hairbrush as evidence. Every detail was documented meticulously. As the day went on, the reality of Laura's death began to sink in for her friends and family. Calls and messages poured in, expressing shock and sorrow. The news of her death left everyone who knew her in a state of disbelief, trying to come to terms with the tragic loss of a beloved wife, mother, and friend. The Sacramento police responded quickly to the 911 call on June 14, 2010. Within minutes, officers and emergency responders arrived at the Samuels home. Detective Patricia Johnson and her partner, Detective Mark Hernandez, led the investigation. Detective Johnson, known for her sharp eye and dedication, and Detective Hernandez, famous for his thorough and careful work, immediately took charge. The crime scene was a disturbing sight. Laura Samuels lay on the living room floor, clearly beaten to death with a hairbrush found nearby. Blood was spattered on the carpet, and furniture was knocked over, showing signs of a violent struggle. The scene was otherwise clean, suggesting that the attacker might have tried to cover their tracks. The detectives began by securing the area to ensure no one could disturb the evidence. They carefully documented everything, taking photographs and making detailed notes. Forensic experts arrived shortly after to collect physical evidence. They dusted for fingerprints on the hairbrush, furniture, and door handles. They also took samples of blood and other potential DNA evidence from the scene. Detective Johnson spoke with Carl Samuels, who was visibly shaken and in tears. She asked him about the events leading up to the discovery of Laura's body. Carl explained that he had woken up early to get ready for work and found Laura in the living room. He had no idea who could have done this to her. While Johnson interviewed Carl, Detective Hernandez examined the rest of the house. He looked for any signs of forced entry, but found none. This suggested that Laura might have known her attacker and let them in. Hernandez noted the absence of defensive wounds on Laura's hands, which indicated she was caught off guard. Neighbors began to gather outside, watching the police activity. Some were interviewed by the detectives, but no one reported seeing anything unusual that morning. The community was shocked and scared, as Laura was well-liked and her death was a terrible blow to everyone who knew her. By noon, the detectives had collected all the evidence they could find. They bagged the hairbrush and other items for further analysis at the crime lab. The coroner arrived to take Laura's body for an autopsy, which would provide more details about the time and cause of death. Detective Johnson and Hernandez spent the rest of the day reviewing the evidence and planning their next steps. They knew they had a difficult case ahead of them, but were determined to find justice for Laura and her family. Carl Samuels, the husband of Laura Samuels, was the first suspect in the investigation. Carl was 37 years old and worked as a software developer. He was known to be intelligent, but also quite introverted, often spending more time with his computer than with people. Carl was a devoted husband, but in recent months he had become distant and stressed, which friends noticed. The police brought Carl in for questioning at the Sacramento Police Department on June 15, 2010. Detective Patricia Johnson and Detective Mark Hernandez led the interrogation. Carl appeared exhausted and heartbroken. His eyes were red from crying, and he seemed genuinely distraught over Laura's death. Detective Johnson started by asking Carl about his relationship with Laura. Carl explained that they had been married for 12 years and had 2 children, Ponderosa, age 10, and Velveeta, age 8. He admitted that their marriage had been strained lately due to their decision to participate in a wife-swap sex fantasy. Carl had pushed Laura to participate in this fantasy with another couple, Jessica and Kenneth Planters. This obsession had caused tension between him and Laura. When asked about the night of Laura's death, Carl stated that he had been working late on a state government contract for his job at a well-known tech company, TechWave. He said he went to bed around midnight and didn't wake up until the next morning when he found Laura's body. His alibi was weak since he had been home alone during the time of the murder. Detective Hernandez asked Carl about his relationship with Jessica Planters. Carl admitted that he found Jessica attractive and that they had sex with each other many times, but he insisted that nothing that had nothing to do with the murder. He was visibly uncomfortable and kept fidgeting during this part of the questioning. The detectives noted Carl's stress and anxiety, but also his apparent grief. They asked him about any recent arguments with Laura. Carl mentioned that they had fought about the wife swap fantasy and his interest in sexual experimentation a few days before her death. Laura had been upset and told him she didn't want to participate anymore, which had frustrated Carl. Despite his emotional state, Carl cooperated fully with the police. He provided access to his phone and computer for further investigation. Detectives Johnson and Hernandez were cautious but still considered him a suspect. They needed more evidence to either confirm his involvement or clear him of suspicion. As the questioning concluded, Carl was allowed to go home but was instructed not to leave town. The detectives continued to gather information, knowing they had to explore all possible angles in the case to find the truth about who killed Laura Samuels. The second suspect in the investigation was Jessica Planters, a 32-year-old yoga instructor. Jessica was outgoing and charismatic, known for her sociable nature. She taught yoga at a popular studio in downtown Sacramento called Zen Flow Yoga. Many people in the community admired her free-spirited attitude and ability to connect with others. Jessica was part of the wife swap arrangement with Laura and Carl Samuels and her husband, Kenneth. She had developed an unhealthy obsession with Carl and had been trying to convince him to leave Laura for her. Detectives Patricia Johnson and Mark Hernandez brought Jessica in for questioning on June 16, 2010, at the Sacramento Police Department. Jessica arrived wearing casual yoga attire, looking calm and composed. Detective Johnson began by asking Jessica about her relationship with Carl. Jessica openly admitted that loved sexually experimenting with Carl and had strong feelings for him. She said she believed Carl felt the same way but was torn because of his marriage to Laura. When questioned about the night of Laura's death, Jessica claimed she was at home with her husband, Kenneth. She said they had watched a movie and gone to bed early. However, Detective Hernandez pointed out that there were no witnesses to confirm her alibi, making it weak. Jessica then talked about the wife swap arrangement. She explained that it was Carl's idea and that Laura had reluctantly agreed. Jessica saw it as a great opportunity to have sex with Carl. She admitted that she had been trying to convince Carl to leave Laura, but she denied any involvement in Laura's death. The detectives noticed that while Jessica was cooperative, she seemed to be hiding something. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the seriousness of the situation. They pressed her about her obsession with Carl and whether it could have driven her to harm Laura. Jessica maintained her innocence, insisting she would never hurt anyone. During the interrogation, Jessica's phone records were examined. They revealed multiple calls and messages to Carl, including some sent on the night of the murder. This evidence raised further suspicion, as it showed Jessica's intense interest in Carl. Despite her cooperation, Jessica's obsession with Carl and her weak alibi made her a strong suspect. The detectives knew they needed more concrete evidence to either implicate or exonerate her. They continued to investigate her background, looking for any clues that could link her to Laura's murder. As the questioning ended, Jessica was allowed to leave but was instructed not to leave town. Detectives Johnson and Hernandez remained determined to uncover the truth, knowing that Jessica's possible involvement in the crime needed to be thoroughly explored. On June 18, 2010, 4 days after Laura Samuels' tragic death, new evidence emerged that gave the investigation a crucial breakthrough. That morning, it was cloudy and cool in Sacramento. Detective Patricia Johnson received a call from a neighbor, Mrs. Evelyn Turner, who lived 2 houses down from the Samuels home. Mrs. Turner mentioned she had found something unusual while walking her dog in a nearby park called Lamb Park. Mrs. Turner had noticed a discarded bag under a bush near a picnic area. Inside the bag, she found a pair of bloody gloves and a smartphone. She immediately called the police, and Detectives Johnson and Hernandez arrived at the scene within 30 minutes. They carefully collected the bag and its contents, placing them in evidence bags to avoid contamination. Back at the Sacramento Police Department, the detectives examined the new evidence. The bloody gloves were sent to the crime lab for DNA analysis. The smartphone, which was locked, was taken to the tech department to be unlocked and analyzed. Detective Hernandez noted the phone was a newer model, an iPhone 4, which had just been released a few weeks earlier. While waiting for the results, the detectives reviewed their notes on the case. The bloody gloves suggested the killer had tried to dispose of evidence far from the crime scene. The smartphone could potentially belong to the killer or someone connected to the crime. Later that afternoon, the crime lab called with the DNA results. The blood on the gloves matched Laura Samuels, but there was also another DNA profile on the inside of the gloves. The profile did not match Carl Samuels, which was a significant finding. The tech department also managed to unlock the smartphone. It was registered to Jessica Planters, the yoga instructor and second suspect. The detectives found numerous messages and call logs between Jessica and Carl, including some from the night of the murder. Additionally, there were messages that showed Jessica's increasing frustration and jealousy toward Laura. Detective Johnson and Hernandez were surprised by this new evidence. The messages revealed that Jessica had been trying to manipulate Carl into deleting Laura, but her efforts had been unsuccessful. They now had a stronger case against Jessica, as the gloves and the smartphone linked her more directly to the crime. The detectives planned their next steps carefully. They knew they needed to bring Jessica back in for questioning with this new evidence. The case was starting to come together, but they still needed to ensure all details were thoroughly investigated. As the day ended, the detectives felt a renewed sense of purpose. The new evidence had provided a crucial lead, and they were determined to follow it to uncover the full truth behind Laura Samuels' murder. The third suspect in the investigation was Kenneth Planters, a 34-year-old personal trainer. Kenneth was known for his confidence and charm. He worked at a popular gym in Sacramento called Fit Life Gym, where he trained clients and participated in competitive sports. Kenneth was supportive of his wife Jessica's free-spirited nature and had participated in the wife swap arrangement with Laura and Carl Samuels. However, Kenneth had become increasingly jealous and suspicious. Detectives Patricia Johnson and Mark Hernandez brought Kenneth in for questioning on June 19, 2010. Kenneth arrived at the Sacramento Police Department wearing a Fit Life Gym t-shirt and jeans. He appeared nervous but tried to remain composed. Detective Johnson began by asking Kenneth about his relationship with Jessica. Kenneth explained that they had been married for 8 years and had a mostly happy marriage. However, he admitted that the wife swap arrangement had caused tension. Kenneth confessed that he had become uncomfortable with the arrangement, as he was developing feelings for Carl Samuels and felt left out. When asked about the night of Laura's murder, Kenneth claimed he was at home with Jessica. He said they had watched a movie, Iron Man 2, which had been released a few weeks earlier, and went to bed early. Kenneth's alibi was the same as Jessica's, but the detectives were skeptical due to the new evidence linking Jessica to the crime. Detective Hernandez questioned Kenneth about his feelings towards Laura. Kenneth stated that he liked Laura and had no reason to harm her. He seemed genuinely upset about Laura's death and insisted he had nothing to do with it. However, his jealousy and discomfort with the wife swap arrangement were noted by the detectives. The detectives then presented Kenneth with the new evidence, the bloody gloves and the smartphone found in Land Park. Kenneth was visibly shocked and denied any knowledge of the items. He insisted that he had no reason to hurt Laura and was being truthful about his whereabouts on the night of the murder. Despite his cooperation, Kenneth's weak alibi and growing jealousy made him a suspect. The detectives decided to keep a close eye on him while they continued to investigate Jessica. They believed that Kenneth might have more information about the crime and Jessica's involvement. As the questioning ended, Kenneth was allowed to leave, but was instructed not to leave town. Detectives Johnson and Hernandez were determined to uncover the full truth, knowing that the evidence was leading them closer to solving the case. On June 20, 2010, the Sacramento police made a breakthrough in the Laura Samuels case. After carefully examining all the evidence, they identified Jessica Planters as the murderer. Jessica, a 32-year-old yoga instructor, had developed an unhealthy obsession with Carl Samuels, Laura's husband. Jessica believed that if Laura were out of the picture, Carl would be with her. The detectives pieced together how Jessica went about killing Laura. On the night of June 13, 2010, Jessica had gone to the Samuels home. She knew Carl would be working late, and Laura would be alone. Using a hairbrush, she brutally beat Laura, ensuring there was no noise to alert the neighbors. Jessica then staged the scene to look like a struggle, hoping it would mislead the police. Jessica's motive was her deep obsession with Carl and her desire to replace Laura in his life. She thought eliminating Laura would make Carl choose her. Additionally, she wanted to frame her own husband, Kenneth, for the murder, ensuring both her romantic rival and unsatisfactory husband were out of the picture. On June 20, around 2:00 p.m., Detective Patricia Johnson and Detective Mark Hernandez went to Jessica's home to arrest her. The sky was overcast, reflecting the somber mood. Jessica was taken by surprise. She had been teaching a yoga class at Zen Flow Yoga when the detectives arrived. When they informed her of the arrest, Jessica initially tried to maintain her composure but soon broke down, crying and pleading her innocence. The police handcuffed Jessica and escorted her out of the studio. The news spread quickly, and local media, including KCRA3 and Fox 40, covered the arrest. The community was shocked as they watched Jessica, a once-admired yoga instructor, being taken away by the police. Laura's family reacted with a mix of relief and sorrow upon hearing of Jessica's arrest. Carl Samuels was devastated by the betrayal, realizing that someone he knew and trusted was responsible for his wife's death. He struggled to come to terms with the loss and the horrific manner in which it happened. Laura's children, Ponderosa and Velveeta, were too young to fully understand, but they sensed the gravity of the situation. As Jessica was taken to the Sacramento Police Department, the detectives felt a sense of accomplishment. They had successfully identified and apprehended the person responsible for Laura's brutal murder. However, they knew the case was far from over as they prepared for the upcoming trial. The trial of Jessica Planters began on September 15, 2010, in the Sacramento County Courthouse. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Lisa Kamabakuro, a 45-year-old known for her sharp legal mind and strong courtroom presence, presented a compelling case against Jessica. Kamabakuro argued that Jessica's obsession with Carl Samuels and her desire to eliminate Laura as a rival drove her to commit the murder. She detailed the evidence, including the bloody gloves and the smartphone found in Land Park, which connected Jessica to the crime scene. On the defense side, attorney Michael Rachmanoff, a 50-year-old with a reputation for taking on challenging cases, argued that Jessica was innocent and framed by someone else. Rachmanoff claimed that there was no direct evidence linking Jessica to the murder and that the police had not thoroughly investigated other potential suspects, including Kenneth Planters. He also suggested that the DNA evidence on the gloves could have been planted. During the trial, Laura Samuels' family sat in the courtroom, watching with heavy hearts. Carl Samuels, Laura's husband, appeared distraught, often holding back tears. Their children, Ponderosa and Velveeta, were not present, as they were too young to witness the trial's emotional intensity. Friends and community members who knew Laura described her as a loving mother and a dedicated professional, making the crime even more heartbreaking. The jury deliberated for 3 days. On September 25, 2010, they returned with a verdict. Jessica Planters was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom was filled with a mix of relief and sorrow as the judge announced the verdict. Jessica showed little emotion, maintaining a stoic expression. Her plan to eliminate Laura and frame Kenneth had failed, and she now faced the consequences of her actions. During the sentencing phase, Laura's family members gave emotional statements. Carl spoke about the devastating impact of losing Laura and how it had affected their children. The judge sentenced Jessica Planters to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence was seen as just by Laura's family, but it could never fully heal the pain of their loss. The verdict in sentencing had a profound effect on everyone involved. Laura's family felt a sense of closure, knowing that justice had been served. The community, shocked by the crime, began to heal, though the memory of Laura's tragic death lingered. Jessica's conviction sent a message that such a calculated and violent act would not go unpunished. As the trial concluded, those who knew Laura hoped to remember her for the vibrant and loving person she was, rather than the brutal way she was taken from them. After the trial, life slowly began to move on for everyone involved in the case. Carl Samuels, now a single father, focused on caring for his children, Ponderosa and Velveeta. He decided to move out of their Sacramento home, seeking a fresh start. They relocated to a smaller town nearby, where they could begin healing away from the painful memories. Carl took a leave of absence from his job at TechWave to spend more time with his children. He enrolled them in a new school and joined a support group for grieving spouses, finding solace in talking to others who had experienced similar losses. He also sought therapy for both himself and his children to help them cope with the trauma of losing Laura. Jessica Planters, now serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole, was transferred to the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla. In prison, she became isolated, with few visitors and little contact with the outside world. Her obsession with Carl and her misguided actions had led her to a life behind bars, far from the free-spirited yoga instructor she once was. Kenneth Planters, Jessica's husband, struggled to rebuild his life. He left Sacramento and moved to San Francisco, where he found a new job as a personal trainer at a different gym. He sought counseling to deal with his feelings of betrayal and confusion. Kenneth tried to move forward but remained deeply affected by the events and the realization that his wife was capable of such violence. In the years following the trial, those touched by Laura's life and tragic death worked to find peace and healing. While the pain of her loss remained, they found ways to move forward, carrying Laura's memory with them and striving to live their lives with the same warmth and determination she had shown. Our story begins with Olive Parker, a 32-year-old ambitious and driven marketing executive who resided in the upscale neighborhood of Los Olas in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, not far from the Atlantic Ocean. She was known for her intelligence and charming personality, captivating everyone she met. Olive's dedication to her career was unwavering, and she aspired to climb the corporate ladder and make a name for herself in the marketing industry. In July of 2012, the sun-drenched city of Fort Lauderdale buzzed with excitement as Olive's life took an unexpected turn. As the summer heat intensified, Olive's days were filled with meetings at the prestigious marketing firm she worked for, where she tirelessly strategized and executed successful campaigns for renowned brands such as Coca-Cola and Nike. Despite her professional success, Olive's personal life was not without its challenges. Married to Adam Parker, a charismatic and enigmatic man, she told friends their seemingly idyllic relationship, which had once been filled with love and happiness, was now full of cracks and nearing its end. Olive's friends and colleagues noticed a change in her demeanor. The once vibrant and confident woman seemed to be slowly fading away, replaced by a shadow of her former self. Whispers of a troubled marriage and a controlling husband circulated, with rumors of infidelity and deceit. Olive, however, remained steadfast in her commitment to maintaining harmony and balance in her life. Little did Olive know that her pursuit of success and happiness would lead her down a treacherous path. As we dig deeper into the case, we will uncover the shocking events that unfolded, ultimately leading to Olive's tragic demise. It was a scorching hot and humid day in the summer of 2012, the kind of day where the air felt heavy and suffocating. The residents of Los Olas, a posh neighborhood in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, sought refuge from the searing heat in their air-conditioned homes. On this particular steamy night, the tranquility of the neighborhood was shattered by an eerie commotion emanating from Olive Parker's apartment. The sound of screams and shouting pierced the air, causing concern among the neighbors. One neighbor, Patty Reyes de Leon, a retired schoolteacher known for her nosiness, couldn't ignore the disturbing sounds any longer. She peered through her lace curtains, her curiosity piqued. As she strained to see what was happening, she noticed the front door of Olive's apartment was ajar. Mrs. Reyes de Leon's heart raced as she contemplated the possibility of danger. She hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks of getting involved. But her conscience won over, and she decided to investigate. With a sense of trepidation, Mrs. Reyes de Leon stepped out of her air-conditioned sanctuary and made her way towards Olive's apartment. The oppressive heat seemed to intensify as she approached the door, adding to her unease. As she entered the apartment, a wave of stifling heat hit her, causing sweat to bead on her forehead. The living room was dimly lit, the curtains drawn shut, creating an atmosphere of gloom and mystery. Mrs. Reyes de Leon's eyes were immediately drawn to the corpse sprawled on the floor. It was Olive Parker, her once vibrant and ambitious neighbor. The shock of the sight overwhelmed her, and she let out a shriek. Olive lay motionless, her body twisted in an unnatural position. Her once lustrous hair now clung to her sweat-soaked face. The room was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant hum of the air-conditioning unit. Mrs. Reyes de Leon's hands trembled as she reached for her phone to dial 911. The dispatcher's voice on the other end was calm and reassuring, but the gravity of the situation hung heavy in the air. Within minutes, the police arrived at the scene, their sirens wailing in the distance. They cordoned off the area, keeping the curious onlookers at bay. Forensic experts meticulously combed through the apartment, collecting evidence and documenting every detail. News of Olive's tragic demise spread like wildfire through the community. The local newspapers and television stations picked up the story, captivating audiences with the chilling details of the mysterious death. Los Olas, once a haven of tranquility, was now engulfed in a cloud of fear and suspicion. Who could have done such a heinous act? Was it someone Olive knew? Or was this a random act of violence that shattered the illusion of safety? The police arrived quickly, showing how serious the situation was. Detective Suarez, who was in charge, and his team carefully looked through the crime scene. They wanted to find any clues that could help them understand how Olive died. The apartment was very clean, which made it even more mysterious. There were no signs that someone broke in. The only sign of violence was Olive's lifeless body on the floor. She had been strangled to death. Detective Suarez started by taking pictures of everything in the apartment. He wanted to make sure he didn't miss anything important. Then, he and his team started searching for fingerprints. They dusted for prints on doorknobs, windows, and other surfaces. They hoped to find a clue that would lead them to the person who killed Olive. While searching, Detective Suarez noticed something strange. There was a broken vase on the floor near Olive's body. He wondered if it had something to do with the crime. He carefully collected the broken pieces and put them in a bag for further investigation. Next, Detective Suarez checked Olive's iPhone and computer. He wanted to see if there were any messages or emails that could be helpful. He found a few text messages from someone named Sophia. Mark seemed angry and jealous. Detective Suarez thought Sophia might be a suspect. Detective Suarez and his team also talked to Olive's neighbors. They wanted to know if anyone saw or heard anything unusual on the day Olive died. One neighbor said they heard loud arguing and screaming coming from Olive's apartment. Another neighbor said they saw a man leaving the building around the same time. Detective Suarez asked for a description of the man and made a note of it. As the investigation continued, Detective Suarez knew he had a lot of work ahead of him. He had to analyze all the evidence and interview possible suspects. He hoped that by doing this, he would be able to bring justice to Olive and her family. Olive's husband, Adam Parker, was suspected of being involved in the shocking death of his wife. Adam, 35, was a lawyer who specialized in traffic accidents, a job often referred to as an ambulance chaser. He was known for his smooth talking and ability to convince people to work with him. However, behind his charming facade, Adam had deep-rooted insecurities and feelings of inadequacy. Adam's behavior towards Olive had raised concerns among their friends and family. He was possessive and often displayed signs of jealousy. Friends remembered instances where Adam would become angry if Olive talked to other men at social events. He would constantly check her phone and email, searching for any signs of infidelity. These possessive tendencies had intensified in the months leading up to Olive's tragic death. The police interrogated Adam extensively, hoping to uncover the truth behind Olive's demise. They questioned him about his whereabouts on the day of the incident and his relationship with Olive. Adam claimed to have been at work during the time of the crime, but the police were determined to verify his alibi. Detective Suarez and his team meticulously examined Adam's phone records, searching for any evidence that could support or refute his claims. They also interviewed Olive's colleagues and friends, hoping to uncover any information that could shed light on their troubled marriage. As the investigation progressed, the police discovered a series of text messages between Adam and a mysterious woman. The messages hinted at a secret affair, providing a possible motive for Olive's murder. The police obtained a search warrant for Adam's office and home, hoping to find further evidence to corroborate their suspicions. Inside Adam's office, the police found a hidden compartment in his desk containing love letters and intimate photographs of him and another woman. The discovery of this secret relationship sent shockwaves through the community and added another layer of complexity to the case. The investigation into Olive's murder was far from over. The police had uncovered a web of deceit, betrayal, and jealousy surrounding Adam and Olive's marriage. As they delved deeper into the case, they would soon discover more shocking revelations that would turn this tragic story into a true crime nightmare. Sophia Shingrix, a 28-year-old graphic designer, found herself under the scrutinizing gaze of the police as they delved deeper into the mysterious death of Olive Parker. Sophia, known for her vibrant personality and creative flair, had worked alongside Olive at a prominent marketing agency in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. As the investigation unfolded, detectives discovered a tangled web of secrets and hidden desires. Sophia had always admired Olive's intelligence and ambition,
but beneath her friendly facade, jealousy and resentment simmered. The police were determined to uncover any motive Sophia may have had for harming Olive. During the interrogation, Sophia's nervous demeanor betrayed her inner turmoil. She hesitantly admitted to a secret romance with Olive's husband, Adam Parker. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation, adding
a new layer of complexity to the case. Adam, a successful lawyer known for his charm, had been leading a double life. Behind closed doors, he engaged in a clandestine affair with Sophia, betraying the trust of his devoted wife. The police were astounded by this revelation as it shed light on the possible motive behind Olive's tragic end. Sophia's involvement in the affair only intensified the suspicion surrounding her. Could her feelings of jealousy and resentment have driven her to commit the ultimate act of betrayal? The detectives meticulously combed through phone records, text messages, and email exchanges, searching for any evidence that could link Sophia to the crime. The investigation took a dramatic turn when the police uncovered a series of passionate and explicit messages exchanged between Sophia and Adam. These messages revealed a toxic love triangle filled with deceit and manipulation. The detectives realized that Sophia's motive may have been fueled by a desire to eliminate Olive, removing the obstacle standing between her and Adam. As the investigation continued, the police dug deeper into Sophia's background, uncovering a troubled past marred by failed relationships and a history of emotional instability. They interviewed friends, colleagues, and acquaintances, gathering insights into her character and behavior. But the truth remained elusive. The investigation into Sophia's involvement in Olive's death continued as the police meticulously pieced together the puzzle of this twisted tale. The evidence was mounting, but would it be enough to prove her guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? As the investigation into Olive Parker's tragic death unfolded, the police were determined to leave no stone unturned. Their relentless pursuit of the truth led them to a breakthrough when a curious teenager stumbled upon an abandoned phone in a remote part of Fort Lauderdale. Little did they know that this unexpected discovery would hold the key to unraveling the mystery surrounding Olive's demise. The phone, an outdated model with a cracked screen, was carefully examined by the forensic team. They meticulously extracted every piece of information. The phone's call logs and text messages became the focus of their attention as they sought to uncover any connections to the prime suspects in the case. One particular text chain caught their eye. It was a series of exchanges between an unknown number and Adam Parker, Olive's husband. The messages hinted at a secret arrangement, with Adam offering financial support in exchange for sexual favors. The police were intrigued, realizing that this could be the missing piece of the puzzle they had been searching for. Further analysis of the phone's data revealed a hidden folder containing explicit photographs and videos. These shocking materials depicted Adam having sex with a woman who was not Olive. The woman was later identified as Sophia Shingrix, Olive's co-worker and a person of interest in the case. The police were astounded by this revelation as it unveiled a web of deceit and betrayal that had been woven behind Olive's back. As the investigation continued, the police pieced together a timeline of events. They discovered that Adam had been paying for an apartment, using Olive's hard-earned money to sustain an illicit affair. However, this apartment apparently was not for Sophia, but someone else. This revelation painted a chilling picture of deceit and manipulation, as Adam had not only betrayed his wife, but also exploited her financially. The police were determined to bring justice to Olive Parker and expose the truth behind her tragic demise. With the newfound evidence from the abandoned phone, they were inching closer to unraveling the dark secrets that had plagued Olive's seemingly idyllic marriage. The investigation into the tragic death of Olive Parker took an unexpected turn when a new person of interest emerged. Ethan Laroni, Olive's ex-boyfriend, became the focus of the police's attention. Ethan, 34 years old, was known for his charming personality and adventurous spirit despite his struggles with drug addiction. Ethan and Olive had a tumultuous relationship in the past, and even though they had broken up, Ethan still held a deep attachment to her. He longed for a chance to win her back and couldn't let go of their shared history. But it was also revealed that Ethan had been secretly financially supported by Adam Parker, Olive's husband, in exchange for sex. The police were intrigued by this connection and wanted to uncover any motives or connections Ethan might have had to Olive's murder. They delved into Ethan's background, speaking to friends, family, and acquaintances to gather more information. One person who knew Ethan well was his childhood friend, Dean Fring. Dean described Ethan as a troubled soul who often found solace in his relationship with Olive. He recalled an incident where Ethan had expressed his desire to be with Olive again, even though she was happily married to Adam. The police also discovered that Ethan had been involved in a series of petty crimes in the past, including solicitation, mostly related to his drug addiction. They reached out to local law enforcement agencies and reviewed surveillance footage from nearby stores to see if Ethan had been in the vicinity of Olive's apartment on the day of her death. To their surprise, the police found a witness who claimed to have seen Ethan near Olive's apartment complex on the day of the crime. The witness, a store clerk, remembered Ethan because he had come into the store that day to buy cigarettes. This testimony provided a crucial piece of evidence that placed Ethan in the vicinity of the crime scene. As the investigation continued, the police obtained a search warrant for Ethan's residence. They meticulously combed through his belongings, looking for any evidence that could link him to Olive's murder. They found a diary in which Ethan had written about his deep love for Olive and his desire to be with her again, even if it meant having illicit sex with her husband. The police also discovered a hidden stash of drugs in Ethan's apartment, confirming his ongoing struggle with addiction. They wondered if his drug use had clouded his judgment and led him to commit such a heinous act. The investigation into Ethan's involvement in Olive's murder was still ongoing, and the police were determined to uncover the truth. They knew that finding concrete evidence would be crucial in bringing justice to Olive and her grieving family. In a shocking turn of events, the truth behind Olive Parker's tragic murder was finally revealed. After an extensive investigation, the police identified Olive's possessive and insecure husband, Adam Parker, as the perpetrator of this heinous crime. Adam's toxic combination of jealousy and possessiveness led him to commit the unforgivable act of murder, shattering the lives of those who knew and loved Olive. As the investigation unfolded, the police discovered that Adam's controlling behavior towards Olive had escalated in the months leading up to her murder. Friends and family members reported instances of Adam monitoring Olive's every move and isolating her from her loved ones. This pattern of possessiveness raised red flags for those who knew them well. Furthermore, the police uncovered a series of incriminating text messages and emails exchanged between Adam and Sophia Shingrix, Olive's co-worker. These messages revealed a secret affair between Adam and Sophia, adding another layer of complexity to the case. The arrest of Adam Parker sent shockwaves through the community, leaving both friends and neighbors in disbelief. The once idyllic neighborhood of Las Olas became a backdrop for a real-life crime drama, as reporters flocked to the scene to capture the aftermath of this tragic event. This case serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of possessiveness, jealousy, and control in relationships. It is a call to action for society to address the issue of domestic violence and support those who may be trapped in abusive situations. The trial that followed Olive Parker's tragic murder in July of 2012 was a significant event. The courtroom was filled with anticipation as the prosecution, led by District Attorney Laird Hopkins, presented a compelling case against Olive's possessive and insecure husband, Adam Parker. During the trial, the prosecution meticulously laid out a timeline of events, presenting evidence that highlighted Adam's toxic obsession with Olive. They showcased text messages, phone records, and witness testimonies that painted a vivid picture of Adam's jealousy and controlling behavior. The defense attorney, Mark Brinsley Co., fought hard to cast doubt on the evidence, suggesting alternative explanations and attempting to create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors. Throughout the trial, Olive's family sat in the courtroom, their hearts heavy with grief and anger. They listened intently to every word spoken, hoping for justice to be served. The media coverage of the trial was extensive, with reporters from prominent news outlets such as CNN and the New York Times providing daily updates on the proceedings. After days of deliberation, the jury finally reached a verdict. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the foreperson stood up to deliver the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Adam Parker, guilty of first-degree murder. The foreperson announced, their voice echoing through the courtroom. The gasps of disbelief and tears of relief filled the room as Olive's family and friends embraced each other, finally finding a semblance of closure. The judge, presiding over the case, sentenced Adam Parker to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom fell silent as the weight of the sentence sank in. Adam, once a successful lawyer, would now spend the rest of his life behind bars, paying for the heinous crime he committed. The impact of the trial and its outcome reverberated through the community of Fort Lauderdale and beyond. Olive's tragic story served as a reminder of the dark side of human nature and the devastating consequences of possessiveness and jealousy. It sparked conversations about domestic violence and the importance of recognizing the signs of an unhealthy relationship. After the shocking revelation that the prosecutor and the defense attorney were involved in a secret sexual relationship, the trial of Adam Parker was deemed invalid. Olive's family, already burdened by the loss of their beloved daughter, felt betrayed by the very system that was supposed to deliver justice. They were left questioning the integrity of the legal system and wondering if they would ever find closure for Olive's tragic end. Sophia Shingrix, deeply remorseful for her role in the affair, sought therapy to help her cope with the guilt she carried. She realized that her jealousy and resentment towards Olive had clouded her judgment, leading her down a path she never intended to take. Sophia vowed to honor Olive's memory by making amends and striving to be a better person. As the community tried to move forward, the impact of the trial's invalidation continued to reverberate. People couldn't help but question the credibility of the justice system and wonder if the truth would ever be fully revealed. The case garnered attention from advocacy groups and sparked a larger conversation about the need for transparency and accountability within the legal system. Meanwhile, Adam Parker, once again a free man awaiting retrial, retreated from the public eye. He faced the harsh reality of his actions and the consequences that awaited him. The community kept a watchful eye on him, eager to see justice served and Olive's memory honored. And so, the story of Olive Parker's fatal attraction comes to a close. It serves as a chilling reminder of the depths to which jealousy and possessiveness can drive a person. As we reflect on this tragic tale, let us remember the importance of nurturing healthy relationships and seeking help when faced with toxic situations. Connor Smith was a 21-year-old college student living in Sarasota, Florida, a city known for its population of rich cougars, snowbirds, and the dark underbelly of young people who serve them in every way. He was passionate about cooking and dreamed of becoming a top chef. His friends often called him a foodie, and he loved to experiment with different recipes. Connor was a student at Sarasota State College of Florida, where he studied culinary arts. He had a part-time job as a food critic intern at the local newspaper, the Sarasota Herald-Tribune. His reviews were already gaining attention for their snappy, biting style, often bashing Central Florida's love of chain restaurants. Connor was well-liked by his peers. He was known for his friendly personality and his ability to make everyone around him feel comfortable. He had a natural charisma that made him popular not just with his friends, but also with older women. He often attended Sarasota's high-end social events with them in exchange for sex. Connor was confident and adventurous, always looking for new lovers and experiences in life, love, and in the kitchen. In the days before his death, Connor was busy working on a new restaurant review. He was excited about the opportunity to visit one of Sarasota's most exclusive restaurants, Ophelia's on the Bay, a spot famous for its seafood and waterfront views. Connor's excitement was evident in his conversations with friends and colleagues. He was eager to make a name for himself in the world of food journalism and hoped this review would help him stand out. Connor's dreams were big. He wanted to travel the world, tasting different cuisines and learning from the best chefs. He often talked about moving to New York City one day to work in the Michelin-starred restaurant. But those dreams were cut short by a deadly plan that no one saw coming. On the morning of January 15, 2015, Sarasota was just starting to wake up to a clear, crisp day. Around 8 o'clock a.m., Connor Smith's roommate, Jordan Kim, noticed something was off. Connor hadn't left for his early morning shift at the Sarasota Herald-Tribune, which was unusual. Connor was always up before dawn, eager to get a head start on his day. Jordan knocked on Connor's bedroom door, but there was no response. Concerned, he decided to open the door. What he found inside was something that would haunt him forever. Connor was lying on his bed, motionless, with a pale complexion and no signs of life. The room, usually filled with the smell of whatever dish Connor had been perfecting, was now eerily quiet, smelling disturbingly of urine and feces. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken furniture, and no overturned belongings. It was as if Connor had simply gone to sleep and never woken up. Jordan's first reaction was shock. He stood frozen in the doorway, unable to process what he was seeing. Then panic set in. He rushed to his phone and dialed 911, his hands trembling as he tried to explain the situation to the dispatcher. His voice cracked with fear and confusion as he described how he had found his best friend unresponsive in bed. When the paramedics arrived, they quickly confirmed what Jordan already feared. Connor was dead. The police arrived shortly after, their flashing lights reflecting off the walls of the small apartment. The scene was surreal, the calm of the morning shattered by the reality of death. Jordan was in a state of shock. He couldn't believe what had just happened. The officers on the scene had to coax him out of the apartment so they could begin their investigation. He was later taken to the police station for questioning, where he was still visibly shaken, struggling to comprehend the loss of his friend. Connor's body was taken to the Sarasota County Medical Examiner's office for an autopsy, as the investigation into his mysterious death began. No one knew yet that this was just the beginning of a dark and twisted story. The Sarasota Police Department arrived at Connor Smith's apartment within minutes of receiving the 911 call on January 15, 2015. Leading the investigation was Detective Linda Perez-Sanchez, a seasoned officer known for her meticulous attention to detail. Perez-Sanchez had seen her share of crime scenes, but something about this one felt different. The quiet apartment, the untouched belongings, and the peaceful appearance of Connor's body all seemed to hint at a death that was anything but natural. As the officers entered Connor's bedroom, they immediately noticed the lack of any obvious signs of foul play. There was no blood, no weapons, and no indication of a struggle. Connor lay on his bed as if he had just drifted off to sleep. But as Detective Perez-Sanchez took a closer look, she began to suspect that something more sinister had occurred. Connor's pale skin and the faint, bluish tinge around his lips pointed to a possible poisoning. The crime scene was methodically photographed and documented. Every detail, from the neatly made bed to the half-empty glass of water on the nightstand, was carefully recorded. The police combed through the room, searching for any clues that might explain how a healthy, 21-year-old man could suddenly die. They dusted for fingerprints, collected samples from the water glass, and bagged several items from the kitchen, including a tray of leftover cannelloni that Connor had brought home from dinner the night before. The medical examiner, Dr. Karen Ong, arrived at the scene shortly after. She performed a preliminary examination and confirmed Detective Perez-Sanchez's suspicions. Connor's death appeared to be the result of poisoning. Dr. Ong ordered a full toxicology report to determine exactly what substance had caused Connor's untimely death. As the investigation continued, the police expanded their search to the entire apartment. They questioned Jordan Kim, Connor's roommate, who was still in shock but cooperated fully with the investigators. Jordan described Connor's recent activities, including his job at the Sarasota Herald-Tribune and his passion for cooking. He mentioned that Connor had been in good spirits the night before, excited about a new restaurant review he was working on. Detective Perez-Sanchez knew that time was of the essence. If Connor had been poisoned, the person responsible might still be nearby, and the toxicology report would be crucial in identifying the exact cause of death. Bella Summers, 67, was the first person the police questioned in their investigation into Connor Smith's death. Bella was a well-known figure in Sarasota's social scene. She was glamorous, confident, and fiercely proud of her youthful appearance. As so-called cougar, Bella had a reputation for sexual relationships with much younger men, and Connor was one of them. Despite her age, Bella held on to her allure, using her charm to stay at the center of Sarasota's wealthy and older elite. Bella's past was as colorful as her present. She often reminisced about her days at Disney World, where she was one of the first girls to work there when it opened in 1971. Dressed as Cinderella, Bella entertained the park's first guests, a story she loved to share at social gatherings. Her tales of Disney magic kept her in the spotlight, but those who knew her well understood that these stories also masked a deep insecurity. Those days were long behind her, and Bella had spent thousands on cosmetic procedures and beauty treatments, all in an effort to keep age at bay. When police brought Bella in for questioning, she maintained her composure, calmly denying any involvement in Connor's death. She insisted that their relationship was a fun and mutually beneficial arrangement, and claimed to have had no reason to harm him. Bella described their last interaction, a dinner at her home just days before Connor's death, where she served her famous Nonna's cannelloni, a dish she often used to reward her younger lovers for their sexual performance. Bella was cooperative, answering the detectives' questions with ease, and even offering to provide them with the recipe as if it were a harmless detail. But beneath her polished exterior, Detective Linda Perez Sanchez sensed something off. Bella's calm demeanor and willingness to share details seemed almost too perfect, as if she were playing a role she knew well. The detectives noted her behavior and the possible motive: Bella's obsessive need to control and retain her youth, even at the expense of those around her. The question lingered: how far would Bella go to keep her youth and her lovers close? Bella's obsession with retaining her youth and the way she spoke about Connor suggested a deeper, more complex relationship than she initially let on. The detectives couldn't ignore the possibility that Bella's insecurities and fears of losing control over her young lover might have driven her to do something drastic. As the investigation continued, Bella remained under close scrutiny, her carefully crafted image beginning to show cracks. The second suspect the police investigated was Ryan Blake Ross, a 22-year-old fitness trainer who worked at an exclusive gym frequented by Sarasota's elite. Ryan was well known for his good looks, charm, and his side gigs as both a drug dealer and gigolo. He was one of Bella Summers' many younger lovers, but his relationship with her had become increasingly complicated over time. Ryan had a reputation for being outgoing and friendly, but those close to him knew that he had a competitive streak and a tendency towards sexual jealousy. Ryan's connection to Connor Smith was tense. Both young men were sexual partners of Bella, and it was no secret that Ryan saw Connor as a rival. Connor's status as a college student and a gourmand with growing popularity among Sarasota's social circles only fueled Ryan's insecurities as a nearly illiterate college dropout. Ryan had sent Connor several threatening messages in the weeks leading up to Connor's death, warning him to stay away from Bella or else. These messages immediately caught the attention of the investigators. When the police brought Ryan in for questioning, he tried to maintain his usual confident demeanor, but it was clear he was on edge. Ryan, looking haggard compared to his buff social media pictures, denied having anything to do with Connor's death, claiming that his threats were just harmless stuff. He insisted that he had no real issues with Connor, and that their rivalry was more playful than serious. However, Detective Perez Sanchez noticed Ryan's agitation, particularly when asked about his whereabouts on the night of Connor's death. Ryan described his relationship with Bella as sexually intense, but stressed that he wasn't the only young people in her life. He spoke about Bella's many other lovers, including Chloe Hart, who was also one of his customers as a drug dealer, and how he sometimes felt overshadowed by them, especially after Bella sent them a spreadsheet ranking their sexual performance, which showed Connor and Chloe competing for first place and Ryan in fifth place. Ryan's jealousy and anger was evident, and the police began to see him as someone who might have acted out of fear of losing his position in Bella's life. The investigators pressed Ryan on his relationship with Connor, trying to get him to admit to a deeper motive, but Ryan stuck to his story, insisting he had nothing to do with the murder. Despite Ryan's denials, the police couldn't ignore the threats he had made. His jealousy and anger toward Connor, combined with his relationship with Bella, made him a strong suspect. As the investigation continued, the detectives kept a close eye on Ryan, trying to uncover more about his connection to the crime. The third suspect in the investigation was Chloe Hart, a 19-year-old with a complex and troubled past. Chloe had moved to Sarasota from Michigan to escape a life of drug addiction and quickly became involved in the city's flourishing adult film industry, working under the stage name Kara Bratwurst Lover. Despite her youth, Chloe was known for her seductive charm and her ability to manipulate situations to her advantage. She had become one of Bella Summers' many young lovers, viewing the older woman as a path to financial stability and a chance to distance herself from her drug habit and her work in the adult entertainment industry. Chloe's relationship with Bella was transactional in nature. Bella provided Chloe with gifts and financial support, while Chloe offered sex. However, Chloe was not content with just being one of many. She wanted to secure her place as Bella's one and only. This desire to stand out and reach first place in Bella's weekly spreadsheet made her fiercely competitive with Bella's other lovers, including Connor Smith and Ryan Blake Ross. When the police brought Flo in for questioning, she appeared calm and cooperative, but her answers were carefully measured. Chloe claimed that her sexual relationship with Bella was purely for survival and that she had no reason to harm Connor. She admitted to knowing about the tension between Ryan and Connor, but denied having any involvement in their rivalry. Flo painted herself as a victim of circumstance, trying to escape her past and build a better life in Sarasota. Detective Carey Sanchez, however, was not entirely convinced by Chloe's story. He noted that Chloe's responses were often vague, especially when asked about her interactions with Connor and Ryan in the days leading up to Connor's death. Flo was quick to deflect questions about her own feelings toward Bella, focusing instead on how difficult her life had been before moving to Sarasota. Chloe's history of drug use and her involvement in the adult film industry made her a complicated figure in the investigation. The detectives were aware that Chloe had recently been diagnosed with HIV/AIDS, something she attributed to her drug habit. This information, combined with her relationship with Bella, added another layer of complexity to the case. While Chloe insisted that she had nothing to do with Connor's death, the investigators remained suspicious. Her motives, combined with her willingness to manipulate situations to her advantage, made her a person of interest. The detectives continued to dig deeper into Chloe's past and her connection to Bella, trying to determine if she played a role in the murder. The investigation took a shocking turn on January 28, 2015, when new evidence emerged that would reshape the entire case. It was a cool, crisp morning in Sarasota, with the sun just beginning to rise over the Gulf of Mexico. Detective Carey Sanchez and his team were combing through Bella Summers' lavish home, hoping to uncover anything that might link her or the other suspects to Connor Smith's death. What they found was far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. In Bella's bedroom, hidden in the back of a locked drawer, detectives discovered a stack of medical records and personal journals. The records revealed that Bella had been living with HIV/AIDS for several years. But even more shocking were the entries in her journals, where Bella wrote how she had been deliberately giving her many young lovers the disease by making them have sex with her without protection. She described her twisted belief that by infecting them with HIV/AIDS, she could rob them of their youth, a twisted notion born from her deep insecurities about aging and envy towards those who were still young. Bella believed that by passing on the virus, she was somehow avenging her lost youth and punishing those she envied for their vitality and attractiveness. This revelation stunned the detectives. It provided a chilling new motive for Bella to murder Connor. If Connor had discovered Bella's plan and threatened to expose her, it would have given Bella a powerful reason to silence him permanently. The detectives immediately re-examined the timeline of events leading up to Connor's death, paying special attention to his interactions with Bella in the days before he was poisoned. The discovery of Bella's journals also shed new light on the other suspects. Ryan Blake Ross and Chloe Hart had both been romantically involved with Bella and must have been victims of her twisted scheme. The detectives considered the possibility that either Ryan or Chloe might have learned about Bella's plan and sought revenge, or that Bella, fearing exposure, had decided to eliminate anyone who might pose a threat to her. Armed with this new evidence, the investigators intensified their focus on Bella Summers. They began building a case that linked her not only to Connor's murder, but also to a broader pattern of deceit and manipulation. The medical records and journals were sent for further analysis, and the detectives prepared to confront Bella with the horrifying truth they had uncovered. As the investigation continued, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, bringing the detectives closer to solving the case and revealing the dark secrets that had led to Connor Smith's tragic death. On January 30, 2015, just 2 days after uncovering the damning evidence in Bella Summers' home, the Sarasota police made their move. The team, led by Detective Carey Sanchez, arrived at Bella's residence in the early afternoon. The sky was clear, and the winter sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of her upscale neighborhood. Bella was at home, preparing for one of her famous dinner parties, when the detectives knocked on her door. Bella, dressed in an elegant robe and with her hair perfectly styled, answered the door with her usual confident smile. But that smile quickly faded when Detective Carey Sanchez informed her that she was under arrest for the murder of Connor Smith. Bella's reaction was a mix of shock and defiance. She demanded to know what evidence they had against her, maintaining her innocence even as she was handcuffed and led away. As she was escorted to the police car, Bella began loudly reciting the slogan from the soap opera Days of Our Lives. Like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives, in what seemed to be an attempt to feign insanity. The arrest of Bella Summers sent shockwaves through Sarasota's social circles. Known for her glamorous lifestyle and youthful companions, Bella's involvement in such a shocking and heinous crime was almost impossible for many to believe. But as the details of the case began to emerge, it became clear that the charming exterior Bella had hid a much darker reality. Detective Carez Sanchez and the team had built a strong case against Bella. The medical records and journals they found in her home provided clear evidence of her twisted plan to infect her young lovers with HIV/AIDS. They also uncovered a series of text messages between Bella and Connor in which he confronted her about her actions. It was clear from these messages that Connor had threatened to expose Bella, leading her to take drastic measures to protect her secret. As Bella sat in the interrogation room, she remained composed, denying any involvement in Connor's death. But the evidence was overwhelming, and her attempts to cast doubt on the investigation were in vain. Connor's family, devastated by the loss, expressed relief that justice was finally being served. They described Connor as a bright young man with a promising future and couldn't comprehend how someone like Bella could be responsible for his death. Bella's arrest marked a turning point in the investigation. The once confident socialite now faced the reality of her actions, and the Sarasota community watched in disbelief as the case unfolded in the media. Bella Summers' trial began in late March 2015. The prosecution was led by Assistant State Attorney Michael Dunbar, a seasoned 48-year-old with a reputation for being relentless in the courtroom. Dunbar was determined to secure a conviction, painting Bella as a manipulative woman who used her charm to lure in young men and then poisoned them to maintain her twisted sense of youth. Dunbar presented the jury with the evidence found in Bella's home, the medical records, journals, and text messages that clearly showed her malicious intent. He argued that Bella, fearing Connor Smith would expose her secret, decided to kill him by lacing his favorite dish, Nana's cannelloni, with rat poison. The slow, agonizing death Connor suffered was a testament to Bella's cruelty, Dunbar emphasized. Bella's defense attorney, Sharon McAllister, a 39-year-old with a calm demeanor and a sharp legal mind, argued that Bella was being unfairly targeted due to her age and unconventional relationships. McAllister tried to portray Bella as a victim of societal expectations and a woman who had made poor choices but was not a murderer. She claimed that the evidence was circumstantial and that the prosecution had failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Bella had poisoned Connor. McAllister also suggested that Connor's death could have been an accident or the result of someone else's actions, casting suspicion on Bella's other lovers, Ryan Blake Ross and Chloe Hart. Throughout the trial, Connor's family watched with heavy hearts. His mother, Susan Smith, often fought back tears as she listened to the graphic details of her son's death. The emotional toll on the family was evident, and they sought justice for the bright young man who had been taken from them too soon. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. Bella Summers was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge's sentence was seen as a victory for the prosecution and a small measure of justice for Connor's grieving family. The verdict brought some closure to the Smith family, but the pain of losing Connor would never fully heal. For Bella Summers, the once glamorous socialite, the rest of her life would be spent behind bars, far from the luxury and youth she so desperately tried to hold on to. After the trial, the lives of those involved in the case changed dramatically. Bella Summers, once a glamorous figure in Sarasota's high society, began serving her life sentence in Florida's Lowell Correctional Institution. The prison's stark environment was a far cry from the luxury Bella had once known. Stripped of her wealth and status, she quickly became just another inmate, her obsession with youth now a distant memory as she faced the reality of growing old behind bars. Ryan Blake Ross, who had been under suspicion during the investigation, distanced himself from Sarasota's social scene after the trial. The attention he had once enjoyed from older women now brought him unwanted notoriety. Ryan eventually left Florida, moving to California, where he tried to start fresh as a personal trainer in Los Angeles. However, the stigma of his association with Bella Summers and the murder case followed him, making it difficult for him to truly escape his past. Chloe Hart, who had also been a suspect, faced her own challenges. With her reputation tarnished by the trial, she could no longer find work in Sarasota's adult film industry. Flo decided to leave the industry altogether, focusing on overcoming her drug addiction and trying to live a more stable life. She moved back to her hometown in Michigan, where she sought support from her family and local rehabilitation programs. In the years following the trial, Sarasota moved on, but the memory of the shocking crime lingered. It served as a cautionary tale about the dark side of obsession and the lengths to which some would go to cling to their youth. Johnny Ray Miller was only 18 years old when he was killed, but he was already living a life full of adult responsibilities. Born and raised in the small city Bowling Green, Kentucky, Johnny Ray was known for his bright smile, easygoing nature, and dedication to his family. Just days graduating from Warren Central High School, he married his pregnant high school sweetheart, Millie Thornton, and quickly took on the role of a husband and father. A former high school swimming star, Johnny Ray worked as a mechanic at the local Jiffy Lube, spending his days changing oil, rotating tires, and fixing engines. His co-workers liked him for his positive attitude and willingness to help out, even when the shop was busy. Johnny Ray's love for his family was evident to everyone who knew him. He adored his 16-month-old son, Royal, and was often seen pushing him in a stroller through the aisles of the local Walmart. Johnny Ray had big dreams for his family, even if money was tight. He had been talking about taking Millie and Royal to the Smoky Mountains for a vacation, where they could relax and enjoy the great outdoors. But behind the happy pictures on social media, there were struggles that not everyone saw. Johnny Ray was balancing a lot for someone his age, working long hours to support his family while trying to stay involved in the lives of his young wife and son. Despite his commitments, Johnny Ray sometimes found himself in trouble. He had a weakness for other women, which often caused tension between him and Millie. This tension grew when Millie's father, Dr. Alan Thornton, whose house the couple lived in, began spending more time around the couple. Hallen was a respected urologist in town, but he had developed an unhealthy sexual obsession with his son-in-law. Johnny Ray didn't realize the danger he was in, thinking the older man's attention was just a father-in-law's concern. In May of 2018, Johnny Ray's life was tragically cut short. Just days before his death, he had shared a post on Facebook about how excited he was for the future, looking forward to the summer with his family. But that future was stolen from him, leaving behind a young wife, a toddler son, and a town in shock over the brutal crime that would soon come to light. On the morning of May 14, 2018, Bowling Green was just waking up when a horrific discovery shattered the quiet neighborhood on College Street. It was around 7:30 a.m. when Millie Thornton, Johnny Ray's young wife, stepped into the garage of her father's large, two-story home. She had been worried since Johnny Ray hadn't come to bed the night before. She thought he might have fallen asleep working on the old Chevy truck he'd been fixing up, a project he'd been excited about for weeks. What Millie found instead would haunt her for the rest of her life. Johnny Ray's lifeless body lay crumpled on the cold concrete floor. All his clothes, except for his underwear, were torn, almost ripped off, and there was blood everywhere. The sight of her husband, the father of her child and love of her life, battered and broken, sent Millie into a state of shock. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Millie screamed, her cries echoing through the garage and into the quiet morning air. Panicked and terrified, she grabbed her phone and called 911, her hands shaking so badly that she could barely dial the number. When the 911 operator answered, Millie could hardly speak. She managed to choke out the words, "My husband. There's blood everywhere." The operator, sensing the urgency, dispatched emergency responders immediately. Millie, in tears, backed out of the garage, unable to look at Johnny Ray's body any longer. She waited on the front lawn, her face pale and her whole body trembling, as she watched the minutes tick by, each one feeling like an eternity. Within minutes, police officers arrived at the scene, followed closely by paramedics, or greeted by the gruesome sight of Johnny Ray's body. Trying to hold back tears. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air as Boulder police arrived on the scene. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, drawn by the flashing lights, but Jason couldn't bring himself to look at anyone. His world had just been shattered, and all he could do was wait for the nightmare to unfold further. The Boulder police arrived quickly at Paul Barstow's home on the night of June 5, 2017. The flashing lights and sirens cut through the quiet neighborhood, alerting nearby residents that something terrible had happened. Detective Laura Reynolds, a seasoned investigator with 15 years of experience, was the first on the scene. Known for her no-nonsense approach and sharp instincts, Reynolds immediately sensed that this was no ordinary death. As she entered the house, Reynolds took in the disarray. The living room looked like it had been the site of a struggle. An overturned chair, scattered papers, and a shattered coffee mug painted a picture of chaos. But it was the scene in the bedroom that confirmed her worst fears. Paul Barstow lay on the floor, a length of rope still tightly wound around his neck. His face was pale, his eyes lifeless. The sight was disturbing, even for someone as experienced as Reynolds. The crime scene team quickly set to work, photographing the room from every angle and collecting potential evidence. They dusted for fingerprints, took samples from the rope, and carefully bagged the shattered pieces of the coffee mug. Reynolds noticed the position of Paul's body. His hands bore defensive wounds, and there were signs of bruising around his neck and face. To her, this clearly pointed to a violent struggle, suggesting that Paul had fought for his life. However, not everyone on the team was convinced. As the investigation progressed, a controversy began to brew. Some forensic experts argued that the scene could be interpreted differently. Dr. Matilda Chiang, a forensic pathologist with a reputation for thoroughness, suggested that the evidence might point to a suicide rather than a murder. She noted that the rope had been tied in a way that could be self-inflicted, and the disarray in the living room could have been caused by Paul in a distressed state. According to Dr. Chiang, it wasn't uncommon for people in deep emotional turmoil to stage scenes before taking their own lives. This conflict between several different experts created tension within the investigation. On one side, Detective Reynolds and her team were convinced that Paul had been murdered, possibly during a violent struggle. On the other side, Dr. Chiang and her supporters argued for a more nuanced interpretation, one that considered the possibility of suicide. The disagreement slowed the investigation, as the team was forced to consider both possibilities, examining every piece of evidence from multiple angles. As the days passed, the pressure on the Boulder Police Department grew. The media caught wind of the conflicting theories, with local outlets like the Denver Post, a newspaper renowned for its hard-hitting investigations, running stories that questioned whether the police were pursuing the right leads. The controversy only added to the anguish of Paul's family, who were desperate for answers. They wanted to know what had really happened to the man they loved, and they demanded that the police uncover the truth, whether it pointed to murder or suicide. Angelica Barstow, Paul's sister-in-law, quickly became the first person of interest in the investigation. At 34, Angelica was known in Boulder for her quirky personality. She ran a YouTube channel with almost 100,000 subscribers called Fairyworks, where she posted videos about her interactions with fairies and other spiritual beings. The channel had gained quite a lot of attention, including from newspapers and some online outlets, but mostly for the wrong reasons. Viewers attacked her by the thousands, leaking hateful comments saying everything she was talking about was fake and that she was a liar. And by June 2017, the negativity had begun to take its toll on Angelica's mental health. Angelica's marriage to Jason Barstow, Paul's younger brother, had been rocky. Millie spoke softly, her voice trembling as she recounted how they had argued the night before Johnny Ray's death. She was clearly devastated by his murder, but the detectives needed to dig deeper. Billy explained that she had gone to bed alone, assuming Johnny Ray was busy with his project in the garage. When she woke up and found him missing, she panicked and went to look for him, leading to her horrific discovery. The detectives observed Millie closely as she spoke, noting her pale face and trembling hands. Her grief seemed genuine, but they couldn't rule out the possibility that she could be hiding something. The pressure of being a young mother, combined with Johnny Ray's known infidelities, could have driven her to a breaking point. The police continued to press Millie, asking her where she had been during the hours Johnny Ray was killed. Millie insisted that she had been home all night, asleep with her son. She couldn't think of anyone who would want to harm Johnny Ray, but her growing insecurity about their marriage had been evident to her close friends. Millie's responses were calm but filled with sorrow. She repeatedly expressed her disbelief that anyone could hurt Johnny Ray, much less kill him. Despite Millie's apparent innocence, the detectives remained cautious. They needed to explore every angle, and Millie's proximity to the crime made her a key figure in their investigation. As they moved on to other potential suspects, they kept Millie on their list, knowing that in murder cases, even those closest to the victim can have secrets. As the investigation into Johnny Ray Miller's murder continued, the police shifted their focus to Dr. Alan Thornton, Johnny Ray's father-in-law. Dr. Thornton, 52, was a well-known urologist in Bowling Green, Kentucky, with a reputation as a respected and successful medical professional. On the surface, he appeared to be a pillar of the community, dedicated to his practice, involved in local charities, and well-liked by his patients. However, behind closed doors, Alan Thornton was a man with dark and twisted secrets. Johnny Ray had been married to Dr. Thornton's daughter Millie Thornton for just over a year, and while Dr. Thornton publicly supported the young couple by letting them and their son live in his house, he harbored a disturbing sexual obsession with his son-in-law. This obsession had begun innocuously enough, with Dr. Thornton accidentally walking in on Johnny Ray in the bathroom and offering to buy him clothes. But over time, his feelings had evolved into something far more dangerous. An overwhelmingly intense and unhealthy sexual obsession. Alan's feelings were conflicted. He was jealous of Johnny Ray's relationship with his daughter Millie and simultaneously desired Johnny Ray in ways that made him deeply uncomfortable. The police became even more suspicious of Dr. Thornton when they learned about his past. His wife, Carol Thornton, had died in a boating accident years earlier under circumstances that some in the community found questionable. Although no evidence had ever pointed to foul play, the case had never quite sat right with some of the locals. Now, with Johnny Ray's murder, the police wondered if Alan Thornton could be responsible for yet another suspicious death within his family. When the police brought Dr. Thornton in for questioning, he appeared calm and composed, traits expected of a seasoned medical professional. He answered their questions with measured responses, carefully choosing his words. The detectives asked about his relationship with Johnny Ray, and Alan described it as amicable, though he admitted they had their differences. He claimed to have been home the night of the murder, watching television and preparing for an early morning surgery the next day. He even mentioned that he had been binge-watching the feminist allegory The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu, trying to appear as ordinary as possible. However, the detectives noticed something off in Dr. Thornton's demeanor, an underlying tension that suggested he was hiding something. When they pressed him further about whether he had sexual feelings for Johnny Ray, he became slightly defensive, insisting that he had no interest in his son-in-law. He dismissed any suggestion of jealousy or inappropriate feelings, stating that he only wanted what was best for Millie and her new family. Despite his outward calm, Dr. Thornton's answers raised red flags for the investigators. They knew that his successful career and community standing would make it difficult to prove any involvement in Johnny Ray's death without solid evidence. Still, they couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling that Alan Thornton was not being entirely truthful. As they continued their investigation, they kept a close watch on Dr. Thornton, aware that his dark obsession could have been the driving force behind the brutal murder. The investigation into Johnny Ray Miller's murder led the police to a third suspect, Savannah Lee, a 33-year-old stripper who worked at a local gentleman's club called Wild Girls in Bowling Green. Savannah was known for her fiery personality and independence, traits that had drawn Johnny Ray to her in the first place. Their relationship had begun several months before his death, and it was anything but simple. Savannah was captivated by Johnny Ray's youth and charm, seeing in him an escape from her current life. Savannah had a tough exterior, but those who knew her understood that beneath her confidence was a woman desperate for a better future. She had been working at the club for years, entertaining men from all walks of life, but she dreamed of a life far removed from the seedy underworld of adult entertainment. When Johnny Ray came into her life, she believed she had found a way out. Their affair was intense and passionate, filled with quick late-night sex and fast food drive-through and whispered promises. However, as time passed, Savannah grew increasingly frustrated with Johnny Ray's reluctance to leave Millie and their young son. She wanted more than just stolen moments. She wanted a future with him. When the police brought Savannah in for questioning, they found a woman who was both defiant and scared. She wore a tight black leather jacket, ripped jeans, and red lipstick that made her stand out in the small interrogation room. Savannah wasn't one to back down easily, and she met the detectives' questions with a mix of sass and suspicion. She admitted to having an affair with Johnny Ray but denied any involvement in his murder. "I banged him like there was nothing left to lose," she insisted, her voice cracking slightly, though she quickly regained her composure. She claimed that she had been at work the night Johnny Ray was killed, providing an alibi that seemed credible on the surface. Despite her tough demeanor, Savannah's eyes betrayed her anxiety. The detectives pressed her on her relationship with Johnny Ray, asking if she had ever threatened him or his family. Savannah scoffed at the idea, but her frustration was palpable. She resented Millie, not because she disliked her personally, but because Millie stood in the way of what she wanted, a life with Johnny Ray. The detectives noted her anger, but couldn't find any solid evidence linking her to the crime. Still, Savannah remained on their radar, a woman whose desire for a better life might have driven her to desperation. As the investigation continued, the police knew they couldn't rule her out just yet. As the investigation into Johnny Ray Miller's murder entered its third week, the Bowling Green Police Department was at a standstill. Despite interrogating several suspects, including Johnny Ray's wife, Millie, his father-in-law, Dr. Alan Thornton, and his lover, Savannah Blee, the detectives hadn't found any solid evidence that pointed directly to the killer. The case seemed to be going cold, and the small Kentucky town was growing anxious for answers. Then, on a humid morning in late May 2018, a breakthrough came. Detective Samuel Branson, who had been poring over the details of the case, decided to revisit the crime scene one more time. He returned to Johnny Ray's garage, hoping to find something, anything, that had been overlooked in the initial investigation. The garage, a cluttered space filled with tools, car parts, and remnants of Johnny Ray's hobbies, had already been combed through multiple times, but Branson was determined not to leave any stone unturned. As he carefully examined the area around the workbench, something caught his eye. Tucked behind a pile of old newspapers was a small, nearly invisible digital recorder. It was a cheap, pocket-sized device, the kind you might pick up at a convenience store. Branson picked it up and immediately realized it could be crucial evidence. The recorder was dusty, as if it had been there for a while, and its battery was nearly dead, but it was intact. Back at the station, Branson and his team played the recording. What they heard sent chills down their spines. The recording captured the sounds of a heated argument between Johnny Ray and another man, whose voice was quickly identified as Dr. Alan Thornton's. The audio was muffled, but it was clear enough to make out several key phrases. Thornton could be telling Johnny Ray, "I want you in every part of me," and pleading for Johnny Ray to make me the happiest man on earth. The creepy conversation escalated, with Johnny Ray pleading to leave, but the recording abruptly ended before the fatal confrontation. The detectives knew they had found the smoking gun. The recording not only placed Dr. Thornton at the scene of the crime, but also suggested a motive driven by a twisted sense of jealousy and sexual desire. Armed with this new evidence, the police secured a warrant to search Dr. Thornton's home and office. There they discovered more incriminating evidence, including a series of anonymous letters sent to Millie, which they matched to Thornton's handwriting. These letters had been intended to drive a wedge between Johnny Ray and Millie by revealing Johnny Ray's affairs with women, further fueling the doctor's obsessive and dangerous sexual feelings toward his son-in-law. The discovery of the digital recorder was the turning point in the investigation. It gave the police the evidence they needed to move forward with the case and finally bring Johnny Ray's killer to justice. As they prepared to confront Dr. Thornton, they knew they were closing in on a man whose obsession had spiraled into murder. On May 28, 2018, the Bowling Green Police Department made their move. Armed with the digital recording that implicated Dr. Alan Thornton in Johnny Ray Miller's murder, they arrived at Thornton's upscale suburban home early in the morning. The neighborhood was quiet. The only sounds were the chirping of birds and the occasional bark of a distant dog. But inside the Thornton household, chaos was about to erupt. Dr. Thornton, 52, was a well-known and respected urologist in Bowling Green, Kentucky. To the public, he was the picture of professionalism, a devoted father and community leader. But the police have uncovered a darker side, revealing his unhealthy sexual obsession with his son-in-law, Johnny Ray. The evidence suggested that Thornton's jealousy and rage had driven him to commit the brutal murder, and now the time had come to bring him to justice. As the police knocked on the front door, Thornton answered, still dressed in his pajamas. He seemed calm at first, but that quickly changed when the officers informed him they had a warrant for his arrest. The color drained from his face, and he stumbled back, muttering, "This can't be happening." The officers moved swiftly, handcuffing him and reading him his rights as Millie and her son Royal looked on in shock from the hallway. The arrest was a significant moment for the detectives who had worked tirelessly on the case. Thornton was taken to the station, where he was formally charged with first-degree murder. During the interrogation, he initially tried to maintain his innocence, but the weight of the evidence against him was overwhelming. When confronted with the digital recording, his composure cracked. Thornton's face twisted with emotion as he listened to his own voice yearning for Johnny Ray, and he eventually broke down. He admitted that his sexual feelings for Johnny Ray had become uncontrollable. Thornton had been desirous of Johnny Ray's youth and charm, qualities he both desired and resented. When Johnny Ray's relationship with Millie showed signs of strain, Thornton saw an opportunity. He sent anonymous letters to Millie, hoping to sabotage their marriage and manipulate Johnny Ray into a more dependent sexual relationship. But when Johnny Ray refused Thornton's pleas for sex, the doctor's anger boiled over. leading to the violent confrontation in the garage. The news of Thornton's arrest spread quickly through Bowling Green. The Miller family, devastated by the loss of Johnny Ray, were both relieved and horrified by the revelation. Millie, who had loved and trusted her father, was shattered by the truth. As Thornton was taken away, she knew her life would never be the same. The once respected doctor had been unmasked as a murderer, and the town of Bowling Green would never forget the tragedy that unfolded in their midst. The trial of Dr. Alan Thornton began on November 5, 2018 in Warren County Circuit Court. The case had captured the attention of the entire community, with many in Bowling Green shocked by the revelations about the well-known doctor. The courtroom was packed as both the prosecution and defense presented their cases. The prosecution was led by Assistant District Attorney Laura Shepard, a seasoned prosecutor known for her tough, no-nonsense approach. Shepard, 44, laid out a compelling case against Dr. Thornton, emphasizing the premeditated nature of the crime. She argued that Thornton's jealousy and obsession with Johnny Ray Miller had driven him to commit murder. Shepard highlighted the anonymous letters sent to Millie and the digital recording as key pieces of evidence, showing that Thornton had meticulously planned to break up his daughter's marriage. She described Thornton as a man consumed by his twisted desires, ultimately leading him to kill the young father in a fit of rage. On the other side, the defense was handled by attorney Mark Preston, 50, a well-respected figure in Bowling Green's legal community, known for his calm demeanor. Preston argued that Thornton had acted in a moment of temporary insanity, claiming that the doctor's actions were the result of an emotional breakdown rather than a calculated plan. He suggested that Thornton's mental state had deteriorated, causing him to lose control. Preston tried to cast doubt on the prosecution's case by questioning the reliability of the digital recording and suggesting that Thornton's actions might have been influenced by stress rather than deliberate intent. Throughout the trial, Johnny Ray's family, including his wife Millie and their young son Royal, sat in the courtroom. They were visibly emotional as they listened to the details of Johnny Ray's murder. Millie, in particular, struggled to hold back tears as she heard about the extent of her father's betrayal. After several days of testimony, the jury deliberated for just under 4 hours before returning with a verdict. Dr. Alan Thornton was found guilty of first-degree murder. The verdict was met with relief and sadness by Johnny Ray's family and friends. The judge sentenced Thornton to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would pay for the brutal crime. The trial had a profound effect on the Bowling Green community. It was a harsh reminder of how hidden obsessions and betrayals can lead to devastating consequences. For Johnny Ray's family, the verdict provided some measure of justice, but the loss of their loved one would remain a deep wound. In the aftermath of Dr. Alan Thornton's trial, life in Bowling Green slowly began to return to normal, though the impact of the case was deeply felt by everyone involved. Dr. Thornton, now serving a life sentence without parole at the Kentucky State Penitentiary, faced a life of isolation and regret. His once respected medical career was over, and he had become a pariah in his community. The prison environment was harsh, and Thornton struggled to adapt to the new reality of his life behind bars. He was placed in solitary confinement for his own protection, given the high-profile nature of his crime. His family remained supportive but faced their own struggles. The scandal had shattered their lives, leaving them to cope with the shame and isolation that came with Thornton's conviction. For Millie Thornton, the trial had been a devastating experience. As she tried to rebuild her life, she focused on caring for her young son, Royal, and finding some sense of normalcy. Millie continued to live in Bowling Green but found it difficult to escape the shadow of the tragedy that had unfolded. She was often seen in public with a somber expression, grappling with the dual burden of grief for her husband and betrayal by her father. Community support was crucial for Millie as she navigated her new reality. Friends and neighbors offered their condolences and practical help, though nothing could fully mend the emotional scars left by the murder. The Thornton case left a lasting mark on Bowling Green, a small town that had been rocked by the shocking events. While the community worked to heal, the story of Johnny Ray Miller and the betrayal by someone so close to him remained a poignant reminder of the dark side of human nature. Cody McAllister was a 29-year-old software developer working at Cisco in Santa Rosa, California. He was known for his dry wit, his love of classic cars, and his attention to detail. His friends described him as both a bit of a perfectionist and someone with a warm, caring side. He was proud of his career at Cisco, and with Silicon Valley booming in 2019, Cody's future looked bright. He was the oldest of 2 siblings, with a younger sister named Rachel. The two had always had a complicated relationship, with Rachel's rebellious nature and twin drug and alcohol addictions clashing against Cody's sober, structured life. Despite their differences, Cody had always tried to support his sister, especially when their parents passed away a few years earlier. Cody had always wanted to find the perfect partner, and in early 2019, he finally found her in Lily, a freelance fashion designer. Their relationship was intense and moved fast. Within months, they were married. Friends and family were surprised at how quickly everything happened. Cody was usually more careful, but he believed he had found the one. Lily was calm, stylish, and creative, a stark contrast to Cody's tech-focused world where a clean hoodie was the height of fashion. The two seemed like a perfect match on the outside, but there were signs of trouble that Cody's close friends noticed. He seemed more anxious in the days leading up to his death, though no one could put their finger on why. In the days before he died, Cody was still going about his usual routine. He worked late on some big projects for Cisco and had been chatting excitedly with friends about an upcoming trip he was planning for his first wedding anniversary with Lily. They were looking at places like Napa Valley or maybe a quiet weekend in Carmel by the Sea. Cody had also been thinking about the future, possibly starting a family, buying a bigger house, and settling down. But there were also private struggles that Cody was dealing with. He had always had trust issues in relationships, and there were rumors that his marriage wasn't as perfect as it seemed. Still, Cody seemed hopeful that things would improve and that his new life with Lily was the fresh start he had been waiting for. It was the morning of November 18, 2019, when Cody McAllister's body was discovered. At around 7:30 a.m., Lily McAllister, Cody's wife, called 911 saying she had found her husband dead in their condo. The couple lived in a modern, upscale unit in a trendy part of San Jose, not far from Santana Row, an area known for its high-end shops and restaurants. Lily had woken up early and realized Cody wasn't in bed. She told police that after searching the apartment, she found him in the laundry room. When Lily found Cody, he was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. His body had multiple stab wounds, with the fatal blow being to his chest. His arms were limp at his sides and cut up, and the laundry room was in disarray, with clothes scattered around, signaling a violent struggle had taken place. The washer and dryer, both high-end models, were splattered with blood and smelled like old meat rather than clean clothes. Lily was described as calm when she spoke to the 911 operator, though she sounded shaky at times, clearly in shock from what she had found. The first responders arrived within minutes of the call. Officer Mark Tran was the first on the scene, followed closely by his partner, Officer Emily Reyes. They quickly secured the area and began checking for signs of life. Unfortunately, Cody was already cold to the touch. Lily was taken outside and questioned briefly by Officer Reyes, who noted that while Lily appeared upset, she wasn't crying and seemed distant. The officers then called for backup, and the crime scene investigation team arrived shortly after. Neighbors later told reporters that they hadn't heard anything unusual that morning. The walls in the condo building were thick, and it wasn't uncommon for city noise to drown out the sounds from nearby apartments. The couple was relatively new to the building, so no one knew them well, but most described Cody as polite and quiet. They hadn't seen much of Lily, but one neighbor, an older woman who lived across the hall, said she had seen her at the grocery store just the day before. By the time detectives arrived, the building was cordoned off with yellow police tape, and the investigation was in full swing. Cody's body was taken to the coroner's office, and Lily was brought in for questioning. No one could have guessed at the secrets that were about to come to light. The San Jose Police Department arrived swiftly after Lily McAllister's 911 call on the morning of November 18, 2019. Detectives James O'Brien and Lisa Chang, both veterans with the department, were assigned to the case. O'Brien was known for his methodical approach and no-nonsense attitude, while Chang had a reputation for being sharp and detail-oriented. Together, they walked into the upscale condo, ready to piece together what had happened to Cody McAllister. The crime scene was gruesome. The laundry room was small, with Cody's body lying near the door, face up, surrounded by a large pool of blood. Clothes were scattered everywhere. Socks, shirts, and towels were tossed haphazardly on the floor, some of them soaked in blood. It was clear there had been a struggle. A bloody steak knife, likely the murder weapon, was found a few feet away from Cody's body. It had a black ergonomic handle, common in many households, but now stained with clotted blood. The detectives noted the washer and dryer, both covered in spatter, and a few bloody handprints on the doorframe, indicating Cody had likely tried to defend himself. Detective Chang immediately began cataloging evidence. She directed the forensic team to take samples of the blood, check for fingerprints, and look for any signs of forced entry. The laundry room wasn't particularly large, so it didn't take long for the investigators to collect evidence. They used special blue lights to search for additional traces of blood in other parts of the house, but it seemed the attack had been confined to the laundry room. Outside, officers canvassed the neighborhood, asking residents if they had heard or seen anything suspicious, but no significant leads emerged. O'Brien focused on the timeline. The couple had been married for less than a year, and according to Lily, everything had seemed fine. However, the signs of a violent argument were impossible to ignore. There were no signs of a break-in, which suggested that Cody had possibly known his attacker. As they pieced together the evidence, the detectives began to consider the possibility of a domestic dispute gone horribly wrong. The medical examiner later confirmed that Cody had been stabbed 3 times, with the fatal wound being a deep cut to his chest, severing his aorta. The coroner's report indicated that Cody likely died within minutes of the attack. Meanwhile, the detectives continued to search the rest of the condo for more clues, but nothing else seemed out of place. The scene, while chaotic, appeared personal. This definitely wasn't a random attack. The first suspect police turned to was Cody's wife, Lily McAllister, who had made the 911 call reporting the murder. At 32, Lily worked as a freelance fashion designer and had built a modest reputation in the local creative scene for her bold and unique designs. Her quiet, enigmatic personality drew people in, but many who knew her said she kept much of her personal life private. She had met Cody just over a year before, and their relationship had moved quickly to marriage, surprising some of their friends. During her initial interrogation on November 18, 2019, Lily appeared calm but visibly shaken. She told detectives that she had found Cody's body after returning from a quick morning walk. She claimed their marriage had been mostly happy, though she admitted they had their share of arguments, especially recently. As Detective O'Brien questioned her, Lily became more emotional, but her story remained consistent. She repeatedly stated that she had no idea who could have done this to Cody. The detectives, however, couldn't ignore some red flags. For one, there were no signs of forced entry into the condo, which meant the killer was likely someone Cody knew. Lily also had some bruises on her arms and a small cut on her hand. When asked about them, she said they were from an unrelated accident the day before, but the explanation seemed vague. O'Brien, who had a naturally suspicious personality, found her demeanor odd, especially given the violent nature of the crime. As the questioning continued, the tension in the room grew. The detectives mentioned rumors about an affair between Lily and Rachel, Cody's younger sister. After a moment of hesitation, Lily admitted to the sexual relationship. She explained that the affair had started before her marriage to Cody and had continued even after they weighed. In fact, she admitted she had sex with Rachel the afternoon before Cody's death. This revelation added layers of complexity to the situation, suggesting deep emotional connections intertwined with the turmoil of the love triangle. Lily described her feelings for both Cody and Rachel, emphasizing the passion and intense sexual fireworks she shared with Rachel, which contrasted with the stability and calm Cody provided. The detectives noted the significant implications of this admission, recognizing that Lily's secret sexual relationship could have played a critical role in the confrontation that led to Cody's death. Further complicating matters was the lack of background information on Lily. Police struggled to find any records of her existence before 2015. She had told Cody and his friends that she was from Calgary, Canada, but there were no official documents to support this claim. This led detectives to question whether she might be hiding something from her past, and whether that could have played a role in the crime. Despite Lily's cooperation, the police couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story. They pressed her on her relationship with Cody, asking about any recent arguments or tensions between them. Lily admitted they had been arguing about finances and other personal issues, but she denied any involvement in Cody's death. Still, the investigation was just beginning, and while Lily wasn't immediately arrested, she remained a person of interest. Detectives would continue to dig deeper into Lily's past and their relationship, searching for anything that might shed light on the violent act that took Cody's life. The second person the police questioned was Rachel McAllister, Cody's younger sister. Rachel, 26, was a bartender at a trendy downtown San Jose bar called the Fountain Tap. She was also an aspiring singer, known for performing Taylor Swift songs at local open mic nights. With a rebellious personality and a love for the Bay Area's nightlife scene, Rachel was close to Cody but had a complicated relationship with him. Her fiery temper and history of drug and alcohol use made her a suspect almost immediately. Rachel had also been involved in a secret relationship with Lily before Cody had ever met her, a fact that only came to light during the investigation. She had continued her affair with Lily even after Cody and Lily got married, creating a tangled web of sex and deceit. The sexual relationship between the two women had been passionate but full of tension, and detectives believed this could be a possible motive for Rachel to harm her brother. If Cody found out about the affair, it could have created significant conflict. Rachel was brought in for questioning on the afternoon of November 19, 2019, less than 10 days before Thanksgiving. From the moment she sat down, it was clear she wasn't handling the interrogation well. Her frustration showed as she angrily denied any involvement in her brother's death. She told Detective O'Brien that she loved Cody despite their differences and insisted she would never hurt him. However, her body language told a different story. She shifted nervously in her seat, avoiding eye contact, and became defensive when asked about her ongoing affair with Lily. The detectives pressed Rachel on her whereabouts the night of the murder. She claimed she was working late at the fountain tap and then went home to do some pot, but she had no solid alibi to back her up. O'Brien also questioned her about Duke Coleman Kang, her ex-boyfriend with a violent past, who had been seen near Cody's condo around the time of the murder. Rachel admitted she hadn't spoken to Duke in months, but became noticeably tense when his name was mentioned. As police continued to dig into Rachel's personal life, they uncovered her struggles with substance abuse and her financial troubles, which raised more suspicion. Detectives theorized that Rachel's jealousy of Cody's success, combined with the stress of her affair with Lily, could have driven her to a breaking point. While there was no physical evidence directly linking Rachel to the crime, her tumultuous relationship with both Cody and Lily made her a prime suspect in the investigation. The third person police investigated was David Duke Coleman Kang, a 42-year-old felon with a long history of violent crime. Duke had been in and out of prison for various offenses, including drug dealing and assault. He was well known to law enforcement in San Jose, especially around the rougher areas like Eastside, where criminal activity was more frequent. Duke's rough reputation and ties to Rachel McAllister immediately put him on the police's radar after Cody's murder. Duke had been spotted near Cody's upscale condo the night of the murder. A neighbor reported seeing him standing near the building's parking lot around 10:30 p.m., smoking a blunt. This sighting raised alarm bells for the investigators, as Duke was known to have had a volatile relationship with Rachel in the past. Duke and Rachel had broken up months before, but their relationship had been filled with arguments, often fueled by drugs and alcohol. Police wondered if Duke, driven by jealousy or anger, could have been looking for Rachel and ended up at Cody's place instead. On November 21, 2019, Duke was picked up by police for questioning. He was calm, almost indifferent, as Detective O'Brien and his partner, Detective Chang, brought him into the station. Dressed in a worn leather jacket and jeans, Duke appeared unaffected by the seriousness of the situation. When asked about his presence near Cody's building the night of the murder, Duke claimed he was in the area to sexually menace a guy about unpaid drug payments, which he said never happened. He insisted he had nothing to do with Cody's death and claimed he barely knew Cody at all. Duke's criminal record, however, made the detectives suspicious. His involvement in drug-related activities and his connection to Rachel created a possible motive. Could Duke have been looking to settle a score or intimidate someone? And things went horribly wrong. Police pressed him hard on whether his presence was related to Rachel or if there had been a confrontation that led to Cody's death. Duke denied it all, maintaining that he hadn't even gone inside the building that night. Despite Duke's criminal past, police had no solid evidence tying him to the crime. His alibi, though flimsy, wasn't easy to disprove. There were no signs that Duke had entered the condo or been involved in the violent altercation that led to Cody's death. While Duke remained a person of interest due to his connection with Rachel and his proximity to the scene, police knew they needed more concrete evidence to pursue him further. On November 24, 2019, nearly a week after Cody McAllister's murder, the San Jose Police Department received a critical break in the case. The weather that Sunday was chilly, with light rain falling across the city, creating a somber mood around the investigation. Detectives O'Brien and Richards were reviewing evidence at the station when a forensic technician approached them with something unusual. While combing through Lily McAllister's MacBook, the tech had uncovered several hidden files containing medical documents, including one that revealed a secret Cody had possibly just discovered before his death. Lily McAllister was born a man and had undergone gender transition surgery years earlier in Canada. The documents, dating back to 2015, showed that Lily had once been a man known as Lyle Dubchenko. This revelation was shocking not only because of the secret itself, but also because Lily had kept this part of her past completely hidden from Cody, who likely had no idea when they married. As police dug deeper, they also uncovered another bombshell. Before her transition, Lily, as Lyle, had actually been married to Cody's sister, Rachel McAllister, while living in Calgary. This tangled web of relationships immediately added a new layer of complexity to the case. Investigators pieced together a possible scenario. Cody had been browsing the laptop when he stumbled upon these documents. Already dealing with tension in his marriage, this discovery likely pushed him over the edge, leading to a violent confrontation with Lily on the night of his murder. With this new evidence, police interviewed Lily again, this time focusing on her past. When confronted with the documents, Lily admitted that Cody had discovered her secret that evening, leading to a heated argument. But according to Lily, while Cody was furious and felt utterly betrayed, not only because she had kept her transition hidden, but also because of her previous marriage to his sister, the argument did not turn violent. Lily claimed she had tried to calm Cody down, but the argument had quickly escalated until Cody left the apartment to calm down. The discovery of this new information was a massive turning point in the investigation. Detectives now believe that Cody's murder was directly tied to his discovery of Lily's past and the emotional turmoil it caused. The police re-examined the crime scene with this new understanding, hoping to find more evidence to support their theory. They also began speaking to Rachel McAllister again, to clarify her knowledge of Lily's history and how much she had told her brother. This new evidence gave police a clearer motive and pushed Lily to the top of their list of suspects. On the evening of November 26, 2019, after days of investigation, the San Jose Police Department officially identified Lily McAllister as Cody McAllister's killer. Following the discovery of hidden medical documents revealing Lily's past as a transgender woman and her former marriage to Cody's sister, Rachel, police concluded that Cody had discovered these secrets shortly before his murder. This realization had led to a violent argument in a couple's upscale condo, culminating in Cody's stabbing death. Lily McAllister, 32, had always been an enigmatic figure in the local creative scene. Known for her unique fashion designs and soft-spoken demeanor, she had lived a quiet, seemingly private life since arriving in California a few years earlier. But her secret past as Lyle Dubchenko, a man who transitioned in Canada, had remained hidden, even from Cody, her husband of only a few months. When Cody uncovered this information, his sense of betrayal and rage likely led to the violent altercation that ended his life. Police believed that after Cody confronted Lily, the argument quickly spiraled out of control. In a desperate attempt to protect herself from Cody's aggression, Lily had grabbed a kitchen knife during the struggle and stabbed him in the chest. While Lily would later claim she acted in self-defense, detectives found the situation far more complex, given the intense emotional layers of the relationship and the secrets that had just come to light. On November 27, 2019, police arrived at Lily's condo to arrest her. It was a quiet afternoon, and Lily was at home, still reeling from the events of the past few days. When officers knocked on her door, she didn't seem surprised. According to police reports, Lily was calm as they informed her of the charges, stating that she had expected this outcome. Her demeanor remained controlled as they handcuffed her and led her to the patrol car. Meanwhile, Cody's family, especially his parents and sister Rachel, were devastated by the arrest. Rachel's marriage and subsequent sexual relationship with Lily, both before and after her transition, added another layer of heartbreak to an already tragic situation. The family had struggled to come to terms with the tangled web of secrets and betrayals that had led to Cody's death. Still, the arrest brought some closure to their grief, knowing that justice might be served. With Lily in custody, police had their suspect, and the focus turned to the upcoming trial. The case had quickly become quietly talked about in social media, with headlines speculating about Lily's past and the shocking circumstances surrounding Cody's murder. The trial of Lily McAllister for the murder of her husband Cody began in early February 2020. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Mark Harding, a 45-year-old with a no-nonsense reputation, argued that Lily's actions were deliberate. Harding highlighted the evidence found on Cody's laptop and suggested that the discovery of Lily's transgender identity and her prior relationship with Cody's sister, Rachel, was the final trigger for the fatal confrontation. He painted a picture of premeditation, claiming Lily had gone to great lengths to hide her past, which exploded in violence when Cody learned the truth. On the defense side, attorney Sarah Jane Lobison, 39, took the lead. Known for her empathetic yet sharp style, Lobison claimed that Lily had acted in self-defense. She explained that Cody had become enraged after discovering Lily's documents and began a physical altercation that left Lily no choice but to protect herself. Lobison painted a sympathetic image of Lily, describing her difficult life as a transgender woman and the fear she lived with, particularly from rejection by people close to her. She urged the jury to consider Lily's mental state during the argument. Throughout the trial, Cody's family attended every session. His parents sat in the courtroom bailey, devastated by the loss of their son, Rachel McAllister, caught in the middle of the tangled relationships, seen torn, quietly supporting her family but struggling with her complicated feelings about Lily. The emotional weight of the case was evident in their faces as both sides made their arguments. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 2 days. In the end, Lily was convicted of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 20 years in prison, a decision that some of Cody's family felt was too lenient, given the tragic loss of his life. The defense team had hoped for a lesser charge of manslaughter, but the jury sided with the prosecution's view that Lily's actions, while not premeditated, were far more than just self-defense. The trial left a deep emotional scar on both Cody's family and those in the local community who had followed the case closely through media outlets like the San Jose Mercury News. In the end, justice was served, but the pain of Cody's death lingered. After Lily McAllister's trial in February 2020, the lives of those involved changed significantly. Lily was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the murder of her husband, Cody McAllister. She was sent to Valley State Prison in Chowchilla, California, where she faced significant challenges as a transgender woman in a male prison environment. While some inmates were supportive, others were not, and she had to navigate a complex social landscape. In prison, she found support from some inmates and began participating in educational programs. She focused on bettering herself through classes in art and writing, hoping to share her story one day. However, she also faced discrimination from others, making her time difficult. Rachel McAllister, Cody's younger sister, struggled with the aftermath of the trial. She had been deeply affected by her brother's death and her relationship with Lily. As a local bartender in San Jose, Rachel continued to pursue her dream of becoming a singer. She often performed at small venues around the city, trying to channel her grief into her music. In early 2020, she began therapy to help process her emotions, working through her complicated feelings of loss and betrayal. Rachel also spoke publicly about her experiences on her TikTok channel, sharing her story to raise awareness about domestic violence and mental health. Duke Coleman Kang, Lily's ex-boyfriend, who had initially been a suspect in Cody's murder, faced his own troubles. With a history of violent crime and drug use, Duke continued to struggle with addiction after the trial. Reports indicated that he was arrested again in 2020 for drug possession in San Jose. He was sentenced to rehabilitation, where he attempted to turn his life around by becoming a youth pastor in Nashville. Duke's past haunted him, but he aimed to break the cycle of his previous choices. As time passed, Cody's family remained dedicated to honoring his memory. They established a charity focusing on mental health support, hoping to help others affected by violence. Through their efforts, they found some solace and a way to keep Cody's spirit alive. Jake Malton was 35 years old when he died. He lived in Naperville, Illinois, a peaceful suburb near Chicago. Jake was a well-respected man with a sharp mind and a charming personality. He worked as a finance manager at a local investment firm, where he was known for his leadership skills and dedication. He had graduated from Northwestern University with a degree in finance and was seen as a rising star in his field. At home, Jake was a loving father and devoted husband. He lived with his wife, Laura Beth Malton, and their 2 children, Ponderosa and Arson. Jake had a passion for sailing Lake Michigan and spent many weekends at the local marina with his children. His kids loved these outings, and Jake often talked about buying a small sailboat. He was also an active member of the community, participating in local events and charity drives. Jake's personality was a mix of professionalism and warmth. He was friendly and approachable, making him well-liked by his colleagues and neighbors. Jake dreamed of one day taking a sabbatical to spend more time with his family and perhaps travel around the world. In the days leading up to his death, Jake was busy planning a family vacation to the Bahamas. He wanted to surprise his children with the trip, and they were excited about it. In February of 2012, Naperville was frigid, with temperatures often dipping below freezing. The local news was buzzing about the upcoming Super Bowl. Jake, a fan of the Chicago Bears, enjoyed discussing the games with his friends. He was also a subscriber to the Wall Street Journal and kept up with the latest news in finance and business. Jake and his family lived in a comfortable home in a quiet neighborhood. Their house was always warm and inviting, with a cozy living room filled with family photos and mementos from their trips. The Malton family was close-knit, often spending evenings together watching movies or playing board games like Monopoly and Scrabble. In his professional life, Jake had recently been working on a big project at his firm, which had been taking up a lot of his time. Despite his busy schedule, he always made time for his family. His colleagues admired his ability to balance work and family life so well. Jake's dreams and plans for the future were cut short by his tragic death, leaving a void in the lives of those who knew and loved him. On the morning of February 18, 2012, at around 7:30 a.m., a tragic discovery was made in Naperville, Illinois. Laura Beth Malden, Jake Malden's wife, woke up and found her husband's body lying next to her in their bedroom. He had been shot twice. The room was eerily clean, with no signs of a struggle, which suggested that the crime had been planned. Laura Beth, upon finding Jake dead in their bed, was in a state of shock. She immediately called 911, her voice shaking as she spoke to the emergency operator. The operator tried to keep Laura Beth calm while dispatching police and emergency services to their home. Laura Beth's voice trembled as she described finding Jake. Her words were frantic, and she could hardly believe what she was seeing. The operator stayed on the line with her until help arrived. When the police arrived, they found Laura Beth sitting on the floor outside the bedroom, crying and holding her phone. The house was in perfect order, except for the horrifying sight in the bedroom. Jake was lying on the bed, and it was clear he had been dead for several hours. The officers immediately secured the area and began their investigation. By mid-morning, the news had spread throughout Naperville. Local news channels like NBC Chicago and newspapers such as the Chicago Tribune began reporting on the incident. The media coverage added to the tension as reporters and cameras gathered outside the Malton home. As the day went on, the police continued to piece together the events leading up to Jake's death. Laura Beth was taken to the station for questioning, still in a state of shock. The detectives knew they had to act quickly to solve the mystery of Jake Malden's death. On February 18, 2012, the police arrived quickly at the Malton home in Naperville, Illinois. They entered the quiet, neat house and found Laura Beth Malden sitting outside the bedroom, crying. The officers immediately secured the area and called in detectives. Detective Jason Hollis and Detective Sarah Lee Green, both experienced investigators, arrived soon after. Hollis was known for being methodical and detail-oriented, while Green had a reputation for her sharp intuition. They began by carefully examining the bedroom where Jake Malden's body was found. The scene was eerily tidy, with no signs of a struggle, suggesting that the murder had been carefully planned. Jake had been shot twice, and there was no sign of forced entry into the house. Detectives Hollis and Green used various tools to investigate the crime scene. They sprayed luminol, a chemical that glows blue in the presence of blood, to check for any traces that might have been cleaned up. They also took photographs and collected fingerprints from around the room. Forensic experts arrived to gather evidence, including fibers and hair samples, which they bagged and tagged for further analysis. The detectives then moved on to interviewing Laura Beth, who was still in shock. She told them that she had woken up to find Jake dead beside her. Her statements were emotional and confused, making it hard for the detectives to get a clear picture. The officers also spoke with the neighbors, but no one had seen or heard anything unusual, except for one elderly neighbor who mentioned hearing a loud noise the night before. As the investigation continued, the detectives discovered that Jake had been shot with a small-caliber handgun. They searched the house thoroughly, but did not find the weapon. This made them suspect that the killer had taken it with them. They also checked the security cameras in the neighborhood, hoping to find any clues, but the footage did not reveal any suspicious activity. The detectives knew they had to work quickly. They analyzed the evidence collected from the scene, hoping to find leads that would point them toward the murderer. The tidy crime scene, the lack of forced entry, and the missing weapon all suggested that the killer was someone who knew Jake well. Detectives Hollis and Green were determined to uncover the truth and bring justice to Jake Malden. The first suspect in Jake Malden's murder was his wife, Laura Beth Malden. Laura Beth was 32 years old and known for being outgoing and sociable. She had a passion for literature and loved hosting book clubs and charity events at their home. People in the community described her as warm and generous, but lately, some friends had noticed she seemed more withdrawn and anxious. Given that she had easy access to Jake's bedroom, the police had to consider her a suspect. On February 18, 2012, after the police secured the crime scene, Laura Beth was taken to the police station for questioning. The detectives, Jason Hollis and Sarah Lee Green, wanted to know more about her relationship with Jake and her activities the night he was killed. During the interrogation, Laura Beth was visibly upset. She was crying and seemed very confused. Her voice trembled as she explained that she had woken up and found Jake dead beside her. Detective Hollis asked her detailed questions about their relationship, and Laura Beth admitted that they had been going through a rough patch. She mentioned that Jake had been very busy with work and that they had been arguing more than usual. Detective Green asked about the gun used in the murder. Laura Beth denied knowing anything about it. She insisted that she did not own a gun and had no idea where it could have come from. The detectives noted that Laura Beth's responses were emotional, and at times she seemed overwhelmed. Her demeanor was a mix of sorrow and confusion, making it hard for the detectives to determine if she was hiding something or genuinely shocked by her husband's death. As the interrogation continued, the detectives learned more about the Moultons' financial situation. Laura Beth mentioned that Jake handled most of their finances and that she was not aware of any major issues. However, she did know that Jake had been stressed about a big project at work. Meanwhile, the police continued to gather evidence from the Moulton home. They searched for any signs that could link Laura Beth to the crime. They checked her phone records, emails, and social media accounts, looking for any clues. Despite the lack of clear evidence pointing directly at Laura Beth, her emotional state and proximity to the crime made her a key figure in the investigation. The detectives knew they needed more information to either confirm or dismiss their suspicions about her involvement in Jake's death. The second suspect in Jake Moulton's murder was his boss, Merle O'Brien. Merle was 48 years old and known as an ambitious, driven man. He had built his investment firm from the ground up and was described as a workaholic. Merle was meticulous and sometimes ruthless in his business dealings. Recently, Jake and Merle had disagreed over the direction of the company, leading to tension between them. On February 19, 2012, the day after Jake was found dead, detectives Jason Hollis and Sarah Lee Green brought Merle in for questioning. Merle arrived at the police station in a neat suit, looking calm and composed. He greeted the detectives with a firm handshake, showing no signs of nervousness. Detective Hollis started by asking Merle about his relationship with Jake. Merle admitted that they had disagreements, but insisted it was nothing out of the ordinary for business partners. He spoke highly of Jake's skills and expressed shock at his death. Detective Green then asked about the night of the murder. Merle provided an alibi, stating he was at a company dinner event. He even named several colleagues who could confirm his whereabouts. The detectives also questioned Merle about rumors that Jake was planning to report him for sexually harassing secretaries at the firm. Merle's demeanor shifted slightly, but he remained composed. He denied any wrongdoing and suggested that Jake might have been mistaken or misled. The police also investigated Merle's financial records and found that Jake had been handling a major project that could have impacted the company's future. This project had been a source of their recent disagreements. The detectives considered the possibility that Merle had a financial motive to get rid of Jake. As the questioning continued, Merle kept his composure, calmly answering all of the detectives' questions. He maintained that he had no reason to harm Jake and that their disagreements were purely professional. Detective Hollis and Detective Green noted that while Merle seemed to have a solid alibi, his motive couldn't be ignored. They decided to verify his alibi by speaking with his colleagues and checking the event's guest list. They also continued to look into the company's financial dealings, hoping to find more clues. Despite Merle's calm and collected responses, the detectives knew they had to keep investigating all angles. Merle remained a key suspect as they worked to uncover the truth behind Jake Moulton's murder. On February 21, 2012, 3 days after Jake Moulton's death, the weather in Naperville was cold and overcast. At around 10:00 a.m., a breakthrough in the case occurred. A neighbor, while walking her dog near the Moulton home, was shocked to find a small handgun in a nearby park. The park was a popular spot for families and dog walkers, making it an unusual place to find a weapon. The neighbor immediately called the police. Detectives Jason Hollis and Sarah Lee Green were informed about the new evidence. They felt a sense of urgency as they awaited the forensic results. Later that afternoon, the forensic team confirmed that the handgun was indeed the one used to kill Jake. The discovery of the gun was a significant development in the investigation. The detectives reviewed the security footage from the park but found nothing suspicious. They decided to canvass the neighborhood again, hoping to find witnesses who might have seen someone disposing of the gun. They spoke with several residents, including an elderly neighbor, who mentioned seeing a woman walking toward the park late at night, but she couldn't identify her. As they investigated further, Detective Hollis found fingerprints on the gun. The prints matched those of Marie Castelchant, the Maltons' next-door neighbor and a close friend of Laura Beth. Marie was known for being kind-hearted and loyal. This connection made her a key person of interest. With this new evidence, the detectives felt they were getting closer to solving the case. The discovery of the gun and the connection to Marie added a new layer of complexity, but it also brought them one step closer to finding Jake Malton's murderer. The third suspect in Jake Malton's murder was Marie Castelchant, the Maltons' next-door neighbor. Marie, 38, was known for her kindness and loyalty in the community, but she harbored a secret life as well. Under the alias Cookie LaGuardia, Marie worked as a stripper, a fact that added a layer of complexity to the investigation. On February 22, 2012, detectives Jason Hollis and Sarah Lee Green brought Marie in for questioning. The day was cold and cloudy, typical of February in Naperville. Mary looked nervous as she entered the police station, aware that her fingerprints had been found on the gun used to kill Jake. Detective Hollis started the interrogation by asking Marie about her relationship with the Maltons. She admitted that she and Jake had been having an affair, but insisted that she had nothing to do with his murder. Marie explained that she had been home alone the night Jake was killed, which made her alibi weak. Detective Green then asked about the handgun found in the park. Mary became visibly anxious and struggled to explain how her fingerprints ended up on the weapon. She said that Jake had visited her a few days before his death and brought the gun with him. According to Mary, Jake was worried about their affair being discovered and wanted to protect her. However, this explanation seemed suspicious to the detectives. The police also discovered that Jake had secretly mortgaged his house to pay Mary's bills. This financial connection added another layer to the investigation, suggesting a possible motive for Marie. Despite her calm and kind demeanor, the detectives knew they had to dig deeper into her background. As they questioned Marie further, the detectives noticed inconsistencies in her story. She initially claimed she had no idea Jake was planning to visit her the night of his death, but later admitted he had called her earlier that day. Detective Hollis pressed on, asking why she hadn't mentioned this earlier. Mary became flustered and started to stammer. To gather more evidence, the detectives decided to search Marie's home. They found letters from Jake expressing regret over their affair and hinting at emotional manipulation within his marriage. These letters provided insight into Jake's state of mind and suggested that he was planning to confess to Laura Beth and end the affair. Detectives Hollis and Green knew they had to proceed carefully. They continued to investigate Mary's connection to Jake, hoping to find the evidence needed to solve the case and bring justice for Jake Malton. On February 23, 2012, the police in Naperville, Illinois, were ready to make an arrest in the murder of Jake Malton. After days of investigation, they had gathered enough evidence to identify the murderer. The police had pieced together a tragic story of betrayal, financial stress, and emotional breakdown. The detectives found a crucial piece of evidence in Jake's home office, a letter he had written to his children, Ponderosa and Arson. In the letter, Jake expressed regret and guilt over his affair with Marie Castelchant. He also mentioned his plans to confess to Laura Beth and end the affair. The letter showed a darker side of Jake, hinting at emotional manipulation within his marriage. This letter, combined with the evidence gathered, pointed to Laura Beth Malton as the murderer. Detectives Jason Hollis and Sarah Lee Green arrived at the Malton home at 9:00 a.m. to arrest Laura Beth. The morning was cold, with a light snowfall covering the ground. Laura Beth was in the kitchen, making breakfast for her children. When the detectives informed her of the arrest, she was visibly shocked. She broke down in tears, repeatedly screaming, "Let those without sin cast the first stone." The detectives carefully explained the evidence against her. They mentioned the financial stress caused by Jake's secret mortgage to pay Mary's bills and the emotional toll of discovering his affair. They also pointed out the letter Jake had written, which showed his intention to confess and the manipulation within their marriage. Laura Beth's world had been shattered by these revelations, leading her to a breaking point. Laura Beth was handcuffed and taken to the police station, The local news stations, including NBC Chicago, quickly picked up the story. Reporters gathered outside the Malton home, capturing the moment as Laura Beth was led away by the police. The community was in shock, struggling to comprehend how a seemingly perfect family could be torn apart by such a tragedy. At the police station, Laura Beth made a chilling confession to the murder. She explained that she had found out about Jake's affair and the financial problems he had caused. In a moment of utter despair and emotional breakdown, she had shot Jake in their bedroom, unable to cope with the betrayal and stress. She admitted to disposing of the gun in the nearby park, hoping to distance herself from the crime. The arrest of Laura Beth brought a sense of relief to Jake's family and friends, but it also left them with a deep sadness. They struggled to understand how things had gone so wrong. The detectives felt a mix of satisfaction and sorrow, knowing they had solved the case but also aware of the devastating impact on the Malton family. The trial of Laura Beth Malton began on May 15, 2012, in Naperville, Illinois. The courtroom was packed with local residents, reporters from NBC Chicago, and members of Jake Malton's family. The atmosphere was tense as everyone awaited the outcome of this tragic case. The prosecution was led by Assistant State's Attorney Michael Health Backley, a 45-year-old known for his strong sense of justice and meticulous preparation. Health Backley argued that Laura Beth had carefully planned the murder of her husband, driven by jealousy and financial stress. He presented evidence of Jake's affair with Marie Castelchin, the financial problems due to the secret mortgage, and the letter Jake had written, which showed his intention to confess and end the affair. Health Backley painted a picture of Laura Beth as a woman pushed to the edge, ultimately committing a desperate act of violence. The defense attorney, Dorothea Blake, a 38-year-old with a reputation for her empathetic approach, represented Laura Beth. Blake argued that Laura Beth was a devoted wife and mother who had been emotionally manipulated by Jake. She claimed that Laura Beth's actions were the result of a momentary breakdown caused by extreme emotional distress. Blake highlighted Laura Beth's clean record and her dedication to her family, suggesting that she was not capable of premeditated murder. As the trial proceeded, the emotional toll on Jake's family was evident. His children, Ponderosa and Arson, were seen in the courtroom, supported by other family members. They appeared heartbroken and confused, struggling to understand the events that had led to their father's death and their mother's trial. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 3 days. On June 1, 2012, they returned with a verdict of guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced Laura Beth Malton to 20 years in prison, considering the emotional distress she had been under but also the severity of her crime. The reaction to the verdict was mixed. Jake's family felt a sense of justice, but were also saddened by the reality that Laura Beth, someone they had known and loved, was responsible for his death. Some community members felt the sentence was too lenient, while others believed it was fair given the circumstances. The trial and verdict had a profound effect on everyone involved. Jake's family and friends were left to pick up the pieces, struggling with the loss of both Jake and Laura Beth. The community of Naperville was deeply affected as they had lost a respected member and witnessed the unraveling of what seemed to be a perfect family. In the aftermath, discussions about emotional health and the pressures of maintaining a facade and seemingly perfect lives became more prominent. The trial had not only brought closure to Jake's murder, but also shed light on the underlying issues that led to this tragic event. After Laura Beth Malton's trial and sentencing, life in Naperville slowly returned to normal, but the effects of Jake Malton's murder lingered in the community. The Malton children, Ponderosa and Arson, were taken in by their grandparents, who provided them with love and stability during this difficult time. They received support from neighbors and friends, who rallied around them in their grief. Meanwhile, the Malton family home became a quiet reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded there. The neighbors, who had once seen the Maltons as a model family, now whispered about the secrets that had torn them apart. The local newspaper, Naperville Sun, covered the aftermath of the trial extensively, reflecting on the impact of the case on the tight-knit community. Laura Beth Malton began serving her sentence at White Correctional Center, a women's prison in Illinois. Her adjustment to prison life was difficult, as she navigated the challenges of being away from her children and coming to terms with her actions. Reports from the prison mentioned that Laura Beth kept to herself, spending her days reflecting on her choices and participating in prison programs aimed at rehabilitation. The trial also sparked discussions in Naperville about the pressures of maintaining appearances and the impact of emotional distress on individuals and families. Some community members advocated for better mental health support, while others emphasized the importance of open communication in relationships. In the years following the trial, Ponderosa and Arson grew up surrounded by love and support from their extended family. They remembered their father fondly and cherished the memories they had of him sailing and enjoying family vacations. Their resilience and strength became a testament to the community's ability to come together in the face of adversity. It was a warm evening on June 29, 2019, in Old Saybrook, Connecticut. The summer sun had just set, casting long shadows across the quiet neighborhood. At around 8:30 p.m., Josh Parker, a 33-year-old software engineer, made a frantic call to the Old Saybrook Police Department. He had just found his wife, Vanessa Parker, dead in their master bedroom. Josh had been out running errands that evening. He went to Stop and Shop to pick up groceries and then swung by Starbucks for a coffee. When he returned home, he noticed that the house was unusually quiet. Calling out for Vanessa, he received no response. Concerned, he walked up the stairs to their bedroom, where he discovered the horrifying scene. Vanessa, a 32-year-old event planner, was lying on the floor, her wedding veil wrapped tightly around her neck. The room was a mess, with furniture overturned and personal items scattered everywhere, showing signs of a struggle. Josh immediately dialed 911, his voice trembling as he described the situation. When the dispatcher asked Josh to check for a pulse, he complied, but it was clear Vanessa was gone. His shock turned to despair as he sat on the floor beside her, waiting for the police to arrive. He was visibly shaken, his hands trembling and his face pale. Despite the trauma, he managed to stay on the line with the dispatcher, answering questions and providing as much information as he could. Within minutes, the Old Saybrook police arrived at the scene. Officers secured the area and took charge of the investigation. Neighbors gathered outside, their faces reflecting a mix of shock and curiosity. The usually serene neighborhood was now buzzing with activity as news of the incident spread. Local media, including the Hartford Courant and Channel 3 Eyewitness News, arrived on the scene, capturing footage of the police activity and interviewing neighbors who expressed their disbelief over the tragedy. The discovery of Vanessa Parker's body marked the beginning of a complex investigation that would uncover shocking secrets and lead to a devastating conclusion. As the night wore on, the police worked diligently to gather evidence and piece together the events that led to Vanessa's untimely death. Vanessa Parker was 32 years old at the time of her death. She was an event planner in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, known for her demanding and perfectionist nature. Friends and family had nicknamed her Bridezilla in the months before her wedding. Vanessa lived with her husband, Josh Parker, in a cozy house on Main Street. They had recently spent $100,000 on their lavish wedding, which took place at the historic Saybrook Point Inn, a popular venue for such grand events. Vanessa was ambitious and meticulous in her work and quickly made a name for herself in the event planning industry. She was the go-to person for organizing upscale weddings and corporate events in the area. Her clients included high-profile companies and wealthy families who admired her dedication and attention to detail. Despite her demanding personality, Vanessa had a close group of friends who respected her drive. Her best friend, Jessica Moore, was always by her side. Jessica, a marketing manager, had been Vanessa's confidant since their college days. They often met at the local cafe at Ashlawn Farm Coffee to discuss work and life over a cup of their favorite brew. In the days leading up to her death, Vanessa was busy finalizing details for an upcoming corporate event. She had spent hours working on seating arrangements and floral designs, determined to make everything perfect. Despite the stress, Vanessa had big dreams. She wanted to expand her business, possibly opening a second office in New York City. She envisioned herself as a leading figure in the event planning world, admired for her creativity and professionalism. Vanessa's life seemed perfect on the outside, but she carried a burden of secrets. Her demanding nature and high standards often put a strain on her relationships. The discovery of her body marked the tragic end of a life filled with ambition and dreams, leaving her family and friends in shock and grief. The Old Saybrook police arrived at the Parker residence within minutes of Josh's frantic 911 call on June 29, 2019. The team was led by Detective Sarah Collins, a seasoned investigator with 15 years of experience. Detective Collins, known for her thorough and methodical approach, quickly took control of the scene. As the officers entered the master bedroom, they were met with a chaotic and disturbing sight. The room was in complete disarray, with furniture overturned and personal items scattered across the floor. Vanessa Parker's body lay on the floor, her wedding veil tightly wrapped around her neck. The scene suggested a violent struggle had taken place. Detective Collins noted the presence of broken glass, likely from a shattered lamp, and bloodstains on the carpet, adding to the grim tableau. The initial assessment pointed to a crime of passion. Vanessa's death appeared to be the result of strangulation, a brutal and personal method of murder. The use of her own wedding veil as the murder weapon added a chilling element to the crime, indicating a deep emotional connection between the victim and the perpetrator. Detective Collins and her team began their meticulous investigation. They documented the scene with photographs and sketches, ensuring every detail was captured. They collected fingerprints from various surfaces, hoping to find matches that could identify the killer. Fibers and hair samples were also gathered, providing additional forensic evidence that might link the suspect to the crime scene. The police used luminol to detect any hidden bloodstains, illuminating areas that had been cleaned in an attempt to cover up the crime. They also utilized advanced tools like 3D scanners to create a detailed digital model of the room, allowing them to analyze the positions and movements during the struggle. Detective Collins interviewed Josh Parker, who was visibly shaken and cooperative. He provided an alibi for his whereabouts earlier in the evening, claiming he had been running errands. Despite his calm demeanor, the detectives kept him under close scrutiny, aware that spouses are often primary suspects in such cases. Neighbors were also interviewed, with officers canvassing the area to gather any information about unusual activities or suspicious individuals. The local community was in shock, and the media, including the Hartford Courant and Channel 3 Eyewitness News, reported on the tragic event, increasing pressure on the police to solve the case quickly. As the investigation progressed, Detective Collins and her team remained focused and determined, knowing that solving Vanessa Parker's murder required piecing together every bit of evidence and uncovering the hidden truths behind her tragic death. Josh Parker, Vanessa's husband, was the first person the police investigated. At 33 years old, Josh worked as a software engineer. He was known for his calm and composed nature, which often complemented Vanessa's demanding personality. However, the pressure of their lavish $100,000 wedding had taken a toll on him. Friends mentioned that Josh had been more stressed lately, trying to keep up with Vanessa's high expectations and the financial strain. The police brought Josh in for questioning on June 30, 2019, the day after Vanessa's body was found. Detective Sarah Collins led the interrogation. Josh appeared tired and distraught, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Despite his exhaustion, he maintained a cooperative attitude. He recounted his activities on the evening of June 29th, explaining that he had been running errands, including stops at Stop and Shop and Starbucks, before returning home to find Vanessa. During the questioning, Detective Collins noticed Josh's hands were trembling slightly, a sign of his nervousness. He described his relationship with Vanessa as loving but admitted that her demanding nature had been challenging. He mentioned the strain of planning their expensive wedding and the arguments they had about money. Josh's demeanor remained mostly calm, but there were moments when his voice wavered, revealing the depth of his emotional turmoil. The police asked Josh about his whereabouts during the estimated time of Vanessa's death. He provided detailed accounts of his activities, including receipts from the grocery store and the coffee shop to support his alibi. Despite his cooperative behavior, Detective Collins and her team knew they needed to verify every detail. They collected Josh's fingerprints and took a DNA sample to compare with the evidence found at the crime scene. Friends and family described Josh as a patient and understanding person. He was known for his supportive nature, often going out of his way to help Vanessa with her event planning business. However, the financial burden of their wedding and Vanessa's high expectations had pushed him to his limits. Detective Collins continued to probe, looking for any inconsistencies in Josh's story. They asked him about any recent arguments or conflicts with Vanessa, to which he admitted they had fought about money and the wedding expenses. Despite the tension, he insisted that he would never harm Vanessa. As the investigation progressed, the police kept a close eye on Josh. His cooperative attitude and detailed alibi were crucial, but Detective Collins knew that uncovering the truth required thorough and meticulous work. They needed to explore every lead to ensure they did not overlook any crucial evidence. Jessica Moore, Vanessa's best friend and maid of honor, was the next person the police investigated. Jessica was 31 years old and worked as a marketing manager. Known for her cheerful and supportive demeanor, she was a loyal friend to Vanessa despite her demanding nature. Jessica and Vanessa had been inseparable since their college days at the University of Connecticut, where they both majored in business. On June 30, 2019, Detective Sarah Collins and her team brought Jessica in for questioning. Jessica appeared visibly shaken, her eyes red from crying. She described her relationship with Vanessa as close and supportive. They often met at Ashlawn Farm Coffee to catch up and discuss their lives. Jessica recounted the days leading up to Vanessa's death, explaining that they had been busy with last-minute wedding preparations. During the interrogation, a shocking revelation came to light. Jessica was not just Vanessa's friend. She was also her lover and secret wife. The two had been married for 3 years, a fact they had kept hidden from everyone, including Josh. This revelation added a new layer of complexity to the investigation. Jessica admitted that she and Vanessa had been planning to defraud Josh by blackmailing him with compromising photos Vanessa had taken. Detective Collins noticed Jessica's nervousness as she spoke. Her voice trembled and she fidgeted with her hands. Despite her anxiety, Jessica insisted that she had no part in Vanessa's murder. She explained that their blackmail scheme was meant to secure financial stability for both of them, not to harm anyone. Jessica's emotional turmoil was evident, but she maintained her innocence throughout the questioning. The police asked Jessica about her whereabouts on the night of Vanessa's death. She provided an alibi stating that she had been at home, working on a marketing campaign for her company. She mentioned specific details about the campaign, including emails and files she had worked on, which the police later verified. They also collected Jessica's fingerprints and DNA samples to compare with the evidence found at the crime scene. Friends and colleagues described Jessica as a hardworking and dedicated individual. She was well-liked at her job and known for her positive attitude. However, the revelation of her secret relationship with Vanessa and their blackmail scheme cast a shadow over her character. As the investigation continued, Detective Collins and her team remained focused on uncovering the truth. Jessica's emotional state and detailed alibi were important factors, but the detectives knew they had to examine all aspects of her relationship with Vanessa and their secret plans. On July 2, 2019, 3 days after Vanessa Parker's death, a break in the case emerged. It was a humid afternoon in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, with temperatures climbing into the high 80s. Detective Sarah Collins received a call from a local resident who claimed to have found something suspicious while walking his dog in a nearby park. He had been walking his golden retriever, Buddy Rogers Jr., through Saybrook Point Park when Buddy started barking at a bush near the water's edge. Curious, he approached and discovered a smartphone partially hidden under the foliage. Realizing the potential significance, he immediately contacted the police. Detective Collins and her team quickly arrived at the scene. The phone was carefully collected and sent to the forensics lab for analysis. Within hours, technicians managed to unlock the phone and retrieve its data. What they found would change the course of the investigation. The phone belonged to Vanessa Parker. Among the texts, photos, and emails, investigators found a series of incriminating messages between Vanessa and her secret wife, co-conspirator and lover, Jessica Moore. The messages detailed their blackmail scheme against Josh Parker, with explicit instructions on how to execute their plan after the wedding. Additionally, the phone contained compromising photos of Josh that were meant to be used as leverage for blackmail. Detective Collins reviewed the new evidence with a mix of relief and determination. The messages revealed the extent of Vanessa and Jessica's plot, providing a clearer motive for the crime. The team also discovered a series of heated exchanges between Vanessa and an unknown number, later identified as belonging to Michael Reynolds, Vanessa's other spouse from San Diego. The text showed that Michael was furious about Vanessa's threats to release a sex tape involving her and his mother, adding another layer to the complex web of relationships and motives. With this new evidence, the police focused on tracking the movements of Jessica and Michael around the time of the murder. They checked surveillance footage from nearby stores and traffic cameras, trying to establish their whereabouts. The forensic team also compared the fingerprints and DNA found on the phone with those collected at the crime scene. The discovery of Vanessa's phone was a significant breakthrough. It provided crucial insights into the motives and actions of the key suspects. Detective Collins and her team felt a renewed sense of urgency and determination to bring the case to a close. They knew they were getting closer to uncovering the truth behind Vanessa Parker's tragic death. Michael Reynolds, Vanessa's other spouse, was the third person the police investigated. Michael, 40, worked as a construction manager in San Diego. He had a reputation for being hot-headed and had a tumultuous past with Vanessa. Despite moving on, he had occasional run-ins with her, leading to speculation about lingering feelings and unresolved issues. On July 3, 2019, Detective Sarah Collins and her team brought Michael in for questioning. Michael had flown in from San Diego after hearing about Vanessa's death. He appeared agitated and defensive during the interrogation, his frustration evident in his clenched fists and terse answers. He described his relationship with Vanessa as volatile, marked by frequent arguments and dramatic reconciliations. Michael revealed that Vanessa had been blackmailing him, threatening to release a sex tape she had made with his mother. This revelation painted a picture of Vanessa as manipulative and ruthless, willing to go to extreme lengths to control those around her. Michael admitted that he was furious with Vanessa, but insisted that he would never harm her. The police asked Michael about his whereabouts on the night of Vanessa's death. He claimed he was in San Diego working late on a construction project. Michael provided contact details for his coworkers, who corroborated his alibi. He also showed flight records to prove he had only arrived in Connecticut after learning about the murder. Detective Collins noticed Michael's volatility during the questioning. He frequently raised his voice and seemed on the verge of losing his temper. Despite his anger, Michael consistently denied any involvement in Vanessa's death. He expressed relief at being away from her manipulations, but also a sense of regret for the way their relationship had turned out. Friends and colleagues described Michael as hardworking but prone to outbursts of anger. His temper was well known in his professional circles, but he was also respected for his dedication to his work. The revelation of his tumultuous relationship with Vanessa and the blackmail added a layer of complexity to his character. The police collected Michael's fingerprints and DNA samples, comparing them with the evidence found at the crime scene. They also examined his phone records and text messages, looking for any signs of communication with Vanessa leading up to her death. As the investigation continued, Detective Collins and her team remained vigilant, aware that the truth was often hidden beneath layers of lies and deception. Michael's volatile nature and detailed alibi were crucial pieces of the puzzle, but the detectives knew they had to keep digging to uncover the full story behind Vanessa Parker's tragic death. On July 5, 2019, Detective Sarah Collins and her team finally identified the murderer. Josh Parker, Vanessa's husband, was the one who strangled her with her wedding veil. The breakthrough came after the police meticulously analyzed the evidence found on Vanessa's phone and the crime scene. Josh Parker, 33, had always seemed like the perfect husband. He was a calm and composed software engineer admired for his patience and supportive nature. However, beneath this calm exterior, Josh was struggling with the immense pressure of Vanessa's demanding personality and the financial strain of their $100,000 wedding. The discovery of Vanessa's secrets pushed him over the edge. The night before Vanessa's murder, Josh had discovered incriminating messages and photos on her phone. He found out about Vanessa's secret marriages to Jessica Moore and Michael Reynolds, as well as the blackmail schemes. This shocking betrayal led to a heated argument between Josh and Vanessa, which escalated into a physical struggle. Detective Collins pieced together the events leading up to the murder. Vanessa's veil was used to strangle her in the master bedroom, indicating a crime of passion. The disarray in the room and the evidence of a struggle pointed to Josh as the perpetrator. The police compared Josh's DNA and fingerprints with those found at the crime scene, confirming his involvement. On the evening of July 5, 2019, Detective Collins and her team moved in to arrest Josh Parker. They found him at the couple's home on Main Street, sitting in the living room, seemingly lost in thought. The officers approached him cautiously, explaining the charges and reading him his rights. Josh did not resist. Instead, he seemed resigned, his expression a mix of sorrow and relief. As the handcuffs were placed on Josh, he looked around the room one last time. He was not surprised by his arrest. He knew it was inevitable. The Parker family's reactions were a mix of shock and sorrow. Vanessa's parents, Robert and Linda Parker, were devastated by the news, struggling to comprehend the tragedy that had unfolded. Vanessa's sister, Emily, was inconsolable, mourning the loss of her sister and the collapse of their family. The arrest of Josh Parker brought some closure to the investigation, but left a trail of heartbreak in its wake. The Parker family and their friends grappled with the reality of Vanessa's death and the betrayal within their own home. The community of Old Saybrook was left reeling, trying to make sense of the tragic events that had shattered their sense of security. The trial of Josh Parker began on October 15, 2022, at the Middlesex Superior Court in Middletown, Connecticut. The courtroom was packed with media, including reporters from the Hartford Courant and Channel 3 Eyewitness News. The case had attracted significant attention due to the shocking nature of the crime and the revelations about Vanessa Parker's secret lives. The prosecution was led by Assistant District Attorney Lisa Brown Hemley, a 45-year-old known for her tenacity and keen legal mind. Brown Hemley argued that Josh Parker had premeditated the murder after discovering Vanessa's secret marriages and blackmail schemes. She presented the evidence found on Vanessa's phone, including the incriminating messages and photos, as well as the forensic evidence linking Josh to the crime scene. Brown Hemley painted a picture of a man pushed to his limits by betrayal and financial stress, culminating in a violent act of rage. The defense attorney, Brian Stevens, a 50-year-old with a reputation for his persuasive arguments and empathetic approach, argued that Josh Parker had acted in a moment of temporary insanity. Stevens claimed that the discovery of Vanessa's double life and deceit had caused Josh to lose control. He portrayed Josh as a loving husband driven to a breaking point by the overwhelming stress and emotional turmoil. The trial lasted 3 weeks with emotional testimonies from family members and friends. Vanessa's parents, Robert and Linda Parker, attended every day, their faces etched with grief. Vanessa's sister, Emily, often broke down in tears, struggling to cope with the loss and the betrayal by her brother-in-law. The courtroom atmosphere was tense, with both the prosecution and defense presenting compelling arguments. On November 19, 2022, the jury delivered their verdict. Josh Parker was found guilty of second-degree murder. The decision was met with mixed reactions. Vanessa's family expressed relief that justice had been served, though the pain of their loss remained. Some community members felt the sentence was too lenient, given the premeditated nature of the crime. Judge Karen Miller sentenced Josh Parker to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. In her sentencing remarks, she acknowledged the emotional and psychological strain Josh had been under, but emphasized that taking a life was an unforgivable act. Josh showed little reaction as the sentence was read, his face a mask of resignation. The verdict and sentencing had a profound impact on all involved. Vanessa's family and friends continued to grapple with their grief, finding some solace in the justice system's decision. The trial's outcome was seen as a step toward healing, though the scars left by Vanessa's death, and the trial would linger for years to come. After the trial, the lives of everyone involved were forever changed. Josh Parker began serving his 25-year prison sentence at the MacDougall Walker Correctional Institution in Suffield, Connecticut. The facility, known for its high security, became Josh's new home as he adjusted to life behind bars. Reports from local news outlets, including the Hartford Courant, followed his transition, noting his attempts to come to terms with his actions and the reality of his long sentence. Josh's family struggled to cope with the fallout. His parents, who had been supportive throughout the trial, found it difficult to visit him. They faced the dual challenge of dealing with their son's incarceration and the public scrutiny surrounding the case. They occasionally spoke with reporters, expressing their sorrow over the tragedy and their hope for Josh's eventual redemption. Vanessa Parker's family tried to rebuild their lives after the trial. Vanessa's parents, Robert and Linda Parker, continued to live in Old Saybrook, where they were active in local memorial activities to honor Vanessa's memory. They set up a scholarship fund in her name at her alma mater, the University of Connecticut, to support students pursuing careers in event planning. The scholarship was reported by local media as a way to keep Vanessa's legacy alive and contribute positively to the community. Jessica Moore, who had initially been a key suspect, faced her own challenges. Though she was not charged with any crime, the revelation of her secret marriage to Vanessa and their blackmail scheme led to a significant loss of her professional reputation. Jessica left her job as a marketing manager and moved to a different state to start anew, distancing herself from the scandal. She maintained a low profile, with few public appearances reported. Michael Reynolds, Vanessa's other spouse, also tried to move forward. He continued his work in San Diego but faced ongoing media attention due to his involvement in the case. He occasionally spoke out about the impact of Vanessa's blackmail on his life, expressing his hope for personal healing and closure. Overall, the aftermath of Vanessa